Apparently, my friend owns an entire city. I planned a trip to a particular tourist-friendly city I really like visiting because of the history and number of things to do while there. I know someone who lives in the area, and when I mentioned I was planning to spend a few days there, it was suggested that I stay in her guest room to save on hotel costs. This friend has some mental health issues, mainly undiagnosed bipolar, I suspect, but diagnosed depression and anxiety, and can be a little flaky. So I didn't cancel my reservation at the hotel, as I didn't prepay and could always cancel later. I didn't tell her that though. Fast forward to a week before the trip, and she tells me she's not feeling mentally able to have someone stay with her. She's feeling anxious, so she wants to be alone, and she tells me not to come. I took that to mean I couldn't stay with her, which was fine. I still had my hotel reservation, and since it was in the city centre, it would be more convenient location-wise anyway. So I fly into the city and get an Uber to my hotel, then get settled. I texted her and asked how she was feeling that day. She said she was okay and not feeling very anxious that particular day. So I texted back, "That's great. I'm glad you're having a good day. Do you feel like getting dinner tonight? If not, that's alright. I thought it would just be nice to catch up while I'm here, but I understand if you don't feel up to it. Just let me know." A few minutes later, she calls me and immediately starts screaming and shrieking at me that she had told me not to come and that I had no right to be there or to put her in the position of having to entertain when she doesn't want to. I calmly told her I didn't expect her to entertain me at all if she didn't want to, and that I was perfectly happy to just explore by myself each day and relax in my hotel every night. No obligation for her to even see me if she didn't want to. She yelled at me again that I was a horrible person for invading her privacy and coming to the city when she told me not to. I responded that whether or not I stayed with her or even saw her wasn't a factor in my decision to visit the city for a long weekend. I was in a hotel and happy to be there, so I could come and go as I please. She's now doing some thinking about our friendship and deciding whether she can remain friends with someone who goes against her wishes like that. Yeah, I don't think she really needs to put much thought into that because I'm done with the friendship myself. I don't need a friend who tries to act like she can keep a person from visiting a tourist-heavy city just because she doesn't want to see them, or anyone else. The entitlement she's shown is pretty alarming, even taking into account her mental health issues. Expecting someone to cancel a trip they planned without you being a factor. Wow. Now look guys, seriously, I'm not trying to belittle this girl's mental health issues, but I really don't think this has anything to do with them at all. Like OP has made it very clear, there is zero obligation to see her, she's just touring the city. It's not that deep, but no, this girl is saying that you're not allowed into my entire city? Very, very weird. Alright, now moving on to our second entitled story. Misunderstood girlfriend tried to get me in trouble. So, one of my older brothers has this entitled girlfriend that often gets her way. For example, if the majority of us want to play a board game, she'll cry about it to my brother that she doesn't want to play, and tell my brother not to play, so we end up not playing because there's not enough players. Whenever she comes over to visit, she would make herself at home. Seriously, I saw her using my PlayStation without my permission, and when I asked her to stop, she said it's okay since we're basically family. She doesn't like to share things, and on holidays like Christmas, she often asks for presents from all of us, even my younger sister, who doesn't even have a job, because supposedly, again, we're family. Okay, now that you understand how entitled she is, let's get to the part that annoyed me about her the most. My older brother is called Man. It's pronounced as man. That's right, you address him as Man because his name is Man. So one day during a gathering, we were talking about the silly things that Man did recently because we all know he's the type to do funny but stupid things. And I commented, that sounds like such a Man thing to do. The girlfriend blew up. She was bright red, swung her long blonde hair as if it was a weapon, and glared at me as if I was the biggest scum in the world. That's such a disgusting thing to say. You're so sexist. What he did has nothing to do with his gender, and you should apologize. So it took me a while to understand why she was blowing up like this, until I finally realized, oh snap, she thought I meant his gender, not his name. Oh no, sorry, I think you misunderstood. Oh shut it, I can't believe mum raised a sexist pig like you. Now she meant my mum, but she addresses her as mum as well, because apparently we're family. What? No, seriously, you misunderstood. I should have you disowned for your toxic thinking. Once I tell Mum about this, she's going to have my back and she'll beat the heck out of you for your narrow mind. I was just kind of speechless. As she continued ranting on, I looked at my younger sister as a way to say, is she for real? Now my sister knows of course that I meant man, my brother, not man as in man, so she just thought this was funny and shrugged and just kept watching her going on a full rant. After she finished her long speech, she marched out of the room and grabbed my brother and my mum and told them what I said, and that I should be punished for my narrow thinking. My brother and mother knew immediately that I meant his name, so they tried to tell her that, but she refused to believe them because she knew what she heard. With my mum and brother in tow, she came back to the living room and screeched that I'm in major trouble and that Mum is for sure on her side. My mum rolled her eyes and spoke in our native language, so she couldn't hear what we were talking about. Also, our language can sound a bit mean if we put in a lot of the accents and exaggeration in a loud voice. So, Mum said to me in our native language, "Pretend I'm yelling at you." Why? Because she's crazy and she won't shut up and I've got dinner to cook. Well, can't we just tell her the misunderstanding? Do you really want to try? I then proceed to stomp out the room as she smirked with her arms folded. During dinner, we all gathered at the dining table and the girlfriend kept smirking as she eyes me down and kept making indirect comments about me. My sister then leans into my ear and whispered, "Man is planning on dumping her." And I choked on my noodles, trying to suppress my laughter. The girlfriend looked confused as to why I was covering my mouth, but I just kept stifling my laugh. A week later, Man announced he broke up with her and seemed like a happy and free man. Badums. Well, hey man, I'm sorry you had to go through that. If I'm honest, I think you managed the situation really well, dealing with your girlfriend in an appropriate manner and then dumping her. Good job. And now for our third entitled parent story. Entitled dad/deadbeat dad legally steals $65,000 from daughter about to start college. This is not my story, but another post reminded me of a friend that this happened to. Entitled dad with a wife, son and daughter, both under 10 years old, has an affair, gets young girlfriend pregnant, dumps his family for her and the baby not yet born. Despite being ordered to pay child support to his two older children, he rarely pays. And if he does, it's $100 or $200 tossed at them a couple of times a year. He only sees them on holidays at his parents' house, but occasionally calls during their birthday month or a few weeks after. Twice or 3 times in 5 years, he called with less than an hour's notice and picked them up for burgers and hot dogs at a drive-in restaurant where you sit in the car and a server brings your food out on a tray that hooks on the car window. Meanwhile, the young girlfriend decides raising one baby is all she's up for, so she dumps his butt. And of course, he treats her and his new baby daughter the same as his ex-wife and older children. Years pass. The new baby daughter is 15 and her mother is killed in a car wreck. The court orders her to live with the dad. Why did the entitled dad fight for her in court when he hadn't cared less about her in 15 years? Well, it was a commercial truck that hit and killed her mother, and the company was desperate to make an out-of-court settlement to avoid a lawsuit. The daughter hates her dad, but she's powerless to defy the courts. The settlement is accepted for about $65,000. The money goes into a college fund, but of course, the entitled dad is on the accounts because of US law. And you know what happens next. The next couple of years are rocky, but the daughter is a quiet type who avoids confrontation, so she mostly just studies and endures, waiting to get out and go to college. It comes time to go to college, and she discovers that her dad had cleaned out the accounts and closed it. When she confronted him, he did the classic reaction of yelling, calling her names, saying she owed him, etc. Surprise ending, she and her older half-sister became good friends as adults. Unfortunately, the older brother turned out to be a lot like his dad. Oh my, well I thought the title was shady at first, but that was even worse than I'd expected. Jesus. You're telling me the only reason this dad came back into his daughter's life was because her mum was tragically killed and he thought he could make money out of it. I mean, that is mind-blowing entitlement right there. Wow. And now moving on to our final story of today's episode. Karen doesn't realise that I'm a citizen. tries to enslave wife and me with fake debts. This is a story about somebody much more well off than me expecting me to meet their financial obligations while demanding that I falsify medical paperwork and commit insurance fraud while withholding pay. Basically, my wife and I had just immigrated back to the US and needed jobs and a place to stay. We thought we'd struck gold when a fabulously wealthy woman hired myself as a groundskeeper and maintenance guy, and my wife as a cook and maid for her elderly parents. The pay was low, but part of it involved being able to live rent-free in the second house on the estate. The elderly couple were extremely senile, but still the sweetest old folks you can imagine. It was a really nice property, so for a few months, everything was great. Then, about 3 months in, my wife noticed the pantry, which was itself bigger than our living room, was not being restocked by the grocery delivery company that normally did these things. We contacted our employer, who flew into a rage that managing that sort of thing was our responsibility, so she'd cancelled the delivery service without telling us. It became apparent that she fully expected us to notice and take care of it ourselves. When I asked her how she expected us to buy groceries for her parents when she didn't even tell us she cancelled the service, she became extremely irate. Direct quotes, "Then why the F do I sign a check to each of you every week?" Yeah, this dog earnestly thought we should be using our personal paychecks, which were not very big, to pay for her parents' upkeep. After much deliberation, she grudgingly left us a credit card to go out and buy groceries for her parents, which added to our workload at no extra pay, but we didn't have anywhere else to stay and no other job lined up, so we just dealt with it. Well, another few months go by and she contacts us again. She wants us to sign something. The paperwork shows up and it requests for medical documentation from an insurance company. The chick wants us to attach our timesheets to it, sign it, and send it back to the insurance company. Well, I read it and it becomes apparent she has elder care insurance to pay for live-in nursing services and has told them that we are nurses so she can try and get them to pay our wages. I contact her and inform her that we have not provided medical care, we're not licensed to, and we're not going to fill out the paperwork. Cue mother of all poop storms. Karen goes nuts, screaming into the phone about how much she has done for us and that we owe her, how she will report that we're neglecting her parents, and then call immigration on us and have us deported. I don't think she ever realised that I am a citizen and my wife immigrated legally. I tell her that what she's asking us to do is fraud, and that I'd rather get fired than arrested for a felony. I tell her she has 90 days to find a replacement for us and that we'll be moving out. Things devolve into her screaming about how much money she has and how she's besties with the cops and has a bunch of expensive lawyers to sue us with. I suggest that she ask one of those lawyers how they feel about defending her for insurance fraud, and then I hang up. My wife and I continue our services for the old folks while looking for a new place, because they were actually super nice and the situation wasn't their fault. They were also very senile, mistaking us for other people they knew, forgetting they had kids, etc. So they can't be held accountable for their daughter's behaviour, as they lack any ability to intervene. Then, instead of a paycheck, I get a bill for the last 8 months of rent and a note that she isn't paying our wages until we pay me back for everything you owe me, plus interest. She had valued the rent of the second house provided in our contract at more than she paid us monthly, so we'd never actually be able to pay it off. Yeah, this dog actually tried to make us into indentured servants. So, without responding, I continue performing my duties, studiously keeping logs on our hours and retaining all the receipts for how much more we owed her. 90 days go by without a paycheck. We purchased groceries using the card she provided, which she added to our debts. We document everything. About a week before the 90-day, we contact 2 government agencies. First, the State Department of Labor to report exploitation, and second, Adult Protective Services to inform them that an elderly couple that requires caretaking are going to no longer have caretakers, and that their daughter has refused to provide it. Then we call her and inform her that she is going to be receiving some phone calls from these agencies shortly and should probably contact her attorney. There was about a 60-second dead silence on the phone, then hysterical laughter as she hung up. Okay, Not the response I expected, but screw it. One more week and we're gone. 8 hours later, she shows up in the driveway in a rental car. This dog bought a one-way plane ticket to come out to the estate and report us to the cops for trespassing on the property. This of course doesn't work because we've got a tenancy contract, and if she wants us gone, she has to utilize the legal eviction process. She then tries to claim we are illegal aliens, which a quick glance in our wallets at our IDs by the cops proves false. She starts to shriek at them about if they know who she is or how expensive her lawyers are. The cops have that unique expression of irritated and amused that cops dealing with some dumb stuff they aren't allowed to comment on get, and advise her not to talk to us or attempt to enter or go near the guest house. She moves into their house that night and presumably takes over our duties. I would go out on the balcony every day for the week before I left to drink my coffee and smile as I stared across the big, luxurious lawn to see her standing in the picture window, arms crossed, glaring death at me. To make a long story short, the expensive lawyer she has convinced her to pay our back wages with additional interest for violating state labour laws by withholding them. It turns out that trying to enforce actual slavery is still illegal after all. Who knew? Like, what is this woman playing at? She should be locked up. That is genuinely modern day slavery. If you are charging someone rent and then paying their wages at less than the rent, how can they ever escape? Seriously? Like what is this? This is like a modern day prison as well. Ridiculous. Lock her up and throw away the bloody key. Am I the butthole for posting a relative's nudes in the family group chat? Kyle, a 22-year-old man, is a distant relative. Well, he's actually my stepdad's cousin's kid. I've never really been around him much though, just the odd family get-together. We hadn't seen each other for a while, but we did at a wedding a few months ago. He got drunk and kept hitting on me, saying how hot I was and how he'd love to get to know me better. I rolled my eyes and kept trying to get away from him, but he kept following me about throughout the day. Later on, he made someone give him my number and then he kept on messaging me. I complained to my stepdad, who shrugged it off. Some people even thought it was cute or funny, which just encouraged him to act more outrageous. A few days later, he started sexting me and sending nudes. What's worse was people who were at the wedding would tease me like it was some grand joke. About a month or two later, I had finally had enough, and so I sent everyone who had mocked me one of Kyle's nudes. Family making fun of me and Kyle in the group chat? Kyle nude. Aunt who thought we'd make a cute couple? Kyle nude. His parents who had raised him to be a terrible person? Kyle nude plus lewd texts. My stepdad even received a printed picture on his pillow. Amazing how many people I could find via group chats and various social media, and others that I had phone numbers for. I've had a few family members telling me off, telling me how gross it was sending them nudes of Kyle, and how I invaded his privacy, although the younger generation of cousins has taken to posting memes about him, such as when there's a family reunion and you can't decide which of your cousins to bang, or edited versions of his pictures, such as a small leaf covering his bits. Now, before we answer the question, guys, as to whether OP is the butthole in this one or not, they've actually left a couple of updates down below their post. First edit. Try to block him, but he keeps creating fake accounts and contacting me on different areas of social media. I've already told him off for hitting on me, only to receive a nude of him saying, "Bet if you had a taste, you would like it." I was just fed up with the mocking, the messages from people making fun of me and him hitting me down. It was tiring. I began to dread my phone message sounds, to the point where I turned the phone off and went walking around for the day without it. I know it's extreme to send news to everyone, but it shut them up about how we should go out and how I should give Kyle a chance. And then the next update. Yes, Kyle has stopped sending me nudes. My cousins found out about it and started making fun of him. His stepbrother changed his ringtone to Sweet Home Alabama, and he changed his morning alarm to the sound, "What are you doing, stepbro?" just to annoy him. Kyle did have a rant on my voicemail saying that I'd ruined him and how much of a female dog I was. Well then, a very interesting post to start off today's episode. In my opinion, OP is not the butthole. but honestly, I actually think it's quite close. Guys, before you even hear what I've got to say about this and my reasoning behind it, please do pause the video, go down to the comments and comment your thoughts. Don't get, influenced by me. I want to hear your raw ideas before I say what I've got to say. All right, you done that? Nice, thank you. Anyway, interesting one, really interesting, because I totally get why OP's done it, right? No one's really listening to her. It's a horrible thing getting sent unsolicited nudes, especially from a family member. Like, that is absolutely disgusting. What's even more disgusting, genuinely, is the fact that none of her family are taking this seriously. They're all accepting it and ultimately making a joke out of it. That is horrible. I don't get that at all. So I kind of see why OP has kind of been pushed down this path, and her last resort is to actually just send the nude to people to make them understand how horrible this is and that they really shouldn't be making a joke about a disgusting family situation like this. Look, ideally you wouldn't want to be sending nudes of someone else, obviously, and in some countries, I think in England, that is classified as revenge porn, so probably might be illegal. I don't know if it is where OP is, but you got to be a little bit careful with that. But also, people are making jokes about you because you received an unsolicited nude. Sorry, I wouldn't want that either. I'd want that to stop. I get why you did it. Now moving on to our second post. Am I the butthole for telling another gym member to wear a bra? I, a 25-year-old woman, freaking hate wearing bras. They're uncomfortable, constricting, and expensive. With work from home, I spent the last year and a half basically never wearing a bra, and I got used to it. Quite frankly, my boobs are non-existent anyways. I recently started going to the gym again, and started working out braless. I should note that up until now, no one has ever pointed out anything wrong with me not wearing a bra. However, in the middle of a set of squats, yes, mid-squat, a guy comes up to me, taps me on the shoulder to get my attention, and tells me that my nipples are poking through my shirt. I get really irritated, because why the heck is this guy staring at my nipples in the first place? And then stopping me mid-set to inform me. I get really annoyed, try to finish my sets, but then this effer literally grabs the bar as I ascend and re-racks it for me. He claims it looked like I was having trouble with the last rep and that he'd come over to make sure I could do it, then noticed my nipples. I'm really freaking annoyed at this point, and I told him I didn't need his help finishing my set, and why the F was he looking at my chest in the first place? He said he was going to spot me, but then noticed my chest, and thought it would be inappropriate. What a load of BS. I pointed out that the safety bar was set, so even if I did fail the set, he wasn't needed. But he just insisted that people at gyms look out for each other, and that going forward, I should probably wear a bra so that other people wouldn't get uncomfortable, and that it may help me stay more balanced in my squats. Sorry, well that makes no sense. I'm literally the only girl at the weight section of the gym at the moment, and other guys who are squatting and failed sets never have to worry about this rubbish. I've seen guys fail multiple sets in a row and no one ever rushes to their aid, but I have a very slight pause and everyone thinks I need rescuing. So I'm now really annoyed and also kind of uncomfortable that this guy I've never spoken to in my life thinks he's helping me, and then has the audacity to tell me how to dress. So I tell him, you have bigger boobs and nipples than I do. Maybe you should wear a bra so people won't get uncomfortable and you won't fail your squats. He then got really defensive, saying he was just trying to help, then called me a female dog. Honestly, I'm not sure if I overreacted, but I'm still kind of annoyed, so maybe that's clouding my judgment. Anyway, am I the butthole? Now this one is 100% an obvious no for me, guys. No way is OP being the butthole. That guy is coming over with the most BS excuses I've ever heard. It's pretty obvious that he was just staring at you, right? I mean, it's pretty clear that he is not trying to help you. That is just an obvious lie. I don't really know what his actual intention was here, unless it was literally just to tell you to change what you're wearing. But yeah, not your place, mate. Not your place at all. But OP has actually given us a little update to this story, which adds a little bit more information. Let's get right into it. Update. Am I the butthole for telling another gym member to wear a bra? I finally did start wearing bras again. And not at all because of this incident, but because I'd been dealing with depression that made me not really try and get dressed in general, not just at the gym. And dressing for success has been a small way to try and get myself back into a better mental place. Anyways, that guy from the previous post goes to the gym roughly the same time I do, most days. So unfortunately, I did have to see him again. Even though I really wanted to grab his bar out of fake concern while he was squatting, I mostly ignored him. Until 2 days ago. I was deadlifting and recording myself to check my form. The guy comes over and says something like, "You know sumo is cheating, right?" Now, I get this comment a lot, mostly from men half joking, and it's annoying, but I just completely ignore him. He then repeats it a little louder, and I continue to ignore him. I guess he sees that I was recording myself, because then he asks if I have an Instagram. I don't post my lifts on Insta, and if he could follow me. I keep ignoring him. This is what I'm talking about, guys. It's clear that this guy has some ulterior motives. He's not trying to look out for you, or help with your lift. He's just being a little perv, I'm sorry. Finally, he says something like, "See, your form is so much better now that you're wearing a bra." And I frickin' lost it again. I screamed at him that he's a disgusting, harassing POS. Honestly, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was admittedly very vulgar and it did get a lot of attention. A worker came over and asked if something was wrong, and I said that the guy was sexually harassing me for 2 weeks, and then I asked to speak to a manager. The guy denied it and said he was just trying to help and that I was being sensitive, but either way, the manager asked what was going on and got both our stories. Now, because I'd been recording my lifts, I actually had a video of him where he commented on my bra. So the manager gave him a 30-day ban and told me that if he ever bothered me again, to let her know and she would permanently ban him. So I do feel kind of vindicated, but I also feel a little frustrated that just one man actually saw consequences for this kind of behavior towards women in the gym. It is nice to see someone have repercussions for their actions, but it's also exhausting dealing with this kind of thing constantly at the gym, even if it isn't quite as overt. But I guess I'll have to keep calm and lift on. You see, guys, I freaking knew it. I knew there was something going on here. I knew it was fishy. He wasn't just trying to help you out with your lift. What an absolute BS excuse that was. As soon as you go asking for an Instagram, it's so obvious what your intentions are. This guy's just a creep. Sorry, he can't keep himself to himself in the gym. Creepy bloke. What a mug. As for the manager, thank God that she actually stood up for you. I mean, to be fair, does it help that she was a woman? As you say, this stuff I assume goes on a lot of the time. And if it was a male manager at this gym, is there a chance that the punishment on this weird, creepy bloke might have been less severe? No threat of a permanent ban? I reckon, unfortunately, that might be the case. This sort of thing definitely goes on more than I realize. Girls, women, comment down below. Does this happen at the gym a lot to you or just in life? I'm really sorry if it does. I kind of imagine that it does. And also, guys, goes without saying, don't be like this person. I know none of you would, but don't be like this weird, creepy bloke. Just, if you're going to go up to a girl, at least be nice to her. Don't do this rubbish, please. All right then, now moving on to the final Am I the Butthole post of this episode. Am I the butthole for dancing half naked in my living room, leading to my boyfriend and his family seeing me? This is so embarrassing, but I can't take it anymore. I have to know if I'm in the wrong here. I need to apologize if so. I, a 21-year-old female, was told by my boyfriend, let's call him Nate, who's 26, that I'd get the house to myself for the weekend. He said he had to go visit his parents to take care of a property-related issue. I was pretty excited to have the house to myself because I'd been living with Nate since I was 19 and I miss living alone, though Nate is the love of my life and in no way a trouble to live with. I had this tradition of spending a lot of my weekends baking while in my lingerie. I don't know, it makes me feel pretty. Yes, I know it's stupid, but it just makes me stupid happy, with music and dancing. Super embarrassing to admit, but I also do silly things like pretending I'm a Victoria's model or a singer, and I sing along, loudly. I mention this because this means the house is usually a mess. My dresses are all over and the music is super loud, which is obviously not okay. Now, I hadn't done that in a long time because Nate hates loud music and he's not a fan of my cupcakes. So I decided to do it on this weekend. It's a Sunday and I put on What a Feeling by One Direction and it's super loud. I'm only wearing lingerie, the Victoria's kind, so it's lacy as anything, which I regret so much looking back. Now, my boyfriend used his key to open the door and I didn't hear him come in because, like I said, it's loud in the house and I'm also in the kitchen living room area. Apparently, he wanted to surprise me. Nate brought his mum, dad, and his sister's 2 kids. They're about 10 years old, I think. They come in and there I am, frozen in a dance pose like an idiot. I quickly ran to our room, yelling, "Sorry, wasn't expecting anyone," putting on clothes when Nate came in. He was so angry. He said I was acting like a child and that I'd embarrassed him. His parents wanted Nate to drop them back as soon as possible, refusing to stay, and his mum called me a lot of names, saying the kids had seen everything, and that made me feel really guilty. Now here's where I'm losing sleep over this. On the one hand, I didn't know they would come in. I locked the door too, so I feel like I didn't do anything wrong. I planned on cleaning up my mess before Nate came back as well. Also, Nate and his mum insulted me a lot. But when you look at it from their perspective, I was behaving like an immature person. The house was a mess, I looked a mess, there were baking supplies scattered. Nate just wanted to surprise me and do something nice. Nate is still not completely talking to me, and I don't know how to face his family. I also know his sister told him to make me behave or something, so I feel like I need to apologize before things get worse. But I can't decide for sure if I'm in the wrong here, so I need your help. Now guys, at the top, OP has also said, and this might explain a little bit the quite strong reaction to be fair, Nate's family is also really conservative, and he was brought up like that as well. Someone mentioned I should have added in this. Yeah, fair enough. Also, she's from the US. Okay. I mean, this one, I don't really know if I can give my opinion, because if I was your boyfriend in this situation, that is the sort of behavior I'd be encouraging. You know, having fun, doing what you love doing, chilling out, relaxing, going crazy, whatever. Do what you want to do. It's your life. Live it, right? But, you know, I'm not Nate, and, you know, I'm not a really conservative Christian. I just am someone that lets people do what they want to do if they're having fun. But hey, you know, that's me. You like Nate, you love him, he's the love of your life. Maybe you knew he'd react like that. I don't know. It feels pretty weird though, like not speaking to someone just because they were having a good time dancing semi-naked. I mean, not even naked, right? You still got clothes on. Weird one. If that was me in that situation, I'd be applauding you. I'd be saying, yes, keep going. It looks like it's a lot of fun. And I'd probably join in, not gonna lie. Do you have any spare lingerie lying around for me to whack up? That's a bit too far, but you know what I mean. But listen, you lot, that is not the end of this post because OP has provided us with an update. Alright, so after reading what everyone wrote, I quickly realized that what Nate did was so wrong. A lot of great mums in the comments also helped me understand the fact that even conservative mums, like Nate's, wouldn't react so rudely. It hit me like a wave when I realised what my life had come to. I didn't say anything to Nate about the Reddit post, but he must have figured out that I was upset at him. I was doubting our relationship and pulling away from him. He started talking to me again, and for a day I didn't really say anything. But I knew I had some decisions to make. I genuinely didn't believe I would get so many responses telling me that I was not the butthole. So this was eye-opening for me. Alright, good. Sounds like the Reddit people, the comments down below, are agreeing with me, saying that OP is definitely not the butthole. They're just doing something they enjoy. It's really not that deep. So, a few days after I made the post, I told Nate that we needed to talk. I said that I would be staying with my friend until I felt comfortable around him. Nate didn't know what I was referring to though, which just made me angry because how can he forget a fight that big? And I told him I was upset with how he treated me after the whole "your family walking in on me" incidents. I also mentioned how I shouldn't have to wait for him to be away to dance, bake, or listen to One Direction just because he doesn't like it. He tried convincing me to stay, but I left. I think he knew I wouldn't let this go, like the other things, thanks to you guys. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's exactly what I'm saying. If you like dancing, baking, wearing lingerie around the house, you do that. It's your life, you gotta do what you want sometimes. What are you talking about? Like, if I'm being completely honest, Nate, I'd be sacking him off. Yeah, sure, you love him, but if he doesn't let you do the things that you love, which by the way, are so mundane and everyone does them anyway, sack him off. Get a boyfriend who joins in with you. AKA me. Alright, maybe not me, but someone else who lives in America. Yeah, anyway, let's carry on. Yesterday, I asked Nate to meet me at a cafe so we could have a conversation about everything that happened. Nate cried, like for the first time ever since I've known him. He apologized and told me he messed up and that he would change, because he realized his mistakes now. I told him I wanted to move out, and maybe after a while, if he does actually change, I'd give us another chance. I just needed some space to think about things, and so I told him we should take a break from each other for a while. Nate told me he would talk to his mum as well, and that he should have defended me, to which I said, yeah, you should have. I actually borrowed direct sentences to explain why he was in the wrong from some comments that were left on the Reddit posts because they were so helpful. It went better than how I imagined it would go. How good is Reddit, by the way? Seriously? I mean, look at this. We're improving people's lives here, people. This is exceptional. Also, thank you. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover what I really want to say to everyone who helped me, and also to the mods who removed a lot of creepy comments. Oh my god. Thanks for sharing your stories about dancing in your underwear as well. It made me feel better to know I wasn't some freak for enjoying those things. I'm going to use some baking tips as well that people left and make cupcakes right now, actually because I can. I feel so relieved. And that's the whole point right there. Look, if you want to go crazy, dance around your house, singing, screaming, whatever, go for it. It's fun. When I was at uni in my second and third years, I was fortunate enough to live with some of my very best mates, 4 of my friends, and us 5, we would do some crazy stuff. I mean, I say crazy, similar to UOP. You know, we'd dance, sing loudly, probably annoy the neighbours, and thank God that we didn't live with Nate because he'd been kicked out of the house. That's what would have happened to him. The boring old insert word there. Get a life, Nate, you boring loser. That's what I'd say to you and your mother. I do understand it though. From Nate's perspective, like, he's got his very conservative Christian family just behind him. He's probably like embarrassed for them, but as long as he's not embarrassed for himself and he's just embarrassed for them and can, you know, understand that his reaction was really bad and that he should have defended you, or at least not just like randomly stopped talking to you, that's very strange. And if he is genuinely, you know, sad and apologizes for what he's done and understands how bad it was, then fair play to him. At least he's apologized in the first place. Like, I rate that. He knows he's in the wrong now. Good stuff. See how it goes. Don't write it off. As you said, OP, he is the love of your life, but he doesn't like to dance to One Direction. So how much of a good boy is he really? That's my question. My hag of a stepmom gave away my PlayStation 4 while I was away in college. So I rent out her house while she was on her honeymoon with her newest husband. I am an only son. My mum died of ovarian cancer at only 55 5 years ago. It broke my dad's heart. They'd been together since college and were the same age, with my dad being a month older. I'm 22 years old and I'm about to graduate college with my degree in chemistry when the main events start to occur. I went to college on a full ride scholarship. This is important for later. My dad met my new stepmom when she was my mum's nurse at the hospital where she spent her final days. My stepmom, Grace, played all the right notes to gain my dad's trust. She was empathetic to him, nurturing, comforting after my mum passed. I was 17 and old enough to sense that she was just trying to weasel her way into getting my dad's resources. But it was up to my dad if he wanted to be in a relationship with her. I was in my final year of public school, and I just won a scholarship to attend college out of the country the following year. My dad mourned my mum for a year, and that whole time Grace would check in on him by phone every month or so, in my opinion, to scope out the possibility of sinking her hooks in him. After a year passed, Grace took the gloves off and went hard after my dad. Grace was only 40 when she and my dad started seeing each other. I didn't like her, but at the same time, my dad at least didn't seem so depressed anymore. So I tried to be less pessimistic about her and give her the benefit of the doubt. In my gut, I didn't trust her though. But we're Scandinavian, and at least in my family, the son doesn't tell his father what to do, or even offer any opinion. Grace is from the Czech Republic, if you're wondering. My father was a very successful banker during his career, and amassed quite a portfolio of wealth. I'll spare you the details, but after 6 months of dating, Grace and my father got married. My dad never really got over my mum though, and he was getting weaker and weaker, even though he was only 57. Since his health was fading, he called me to him and asked me point blank, "Boy, what do you need to set you up in this life?" I told him I don't need anything. I'm a man and I can take care of myself. But what are you even talking about, Dad? You're going to be around for decades yet. I did remind him that he had living sisters with children, my aunts and cousins. I also reminded him that I had a full scholarship to college, so don't worry about giving me any cash. Unfortunately though, he was dead only a year later at 59. I of course have seen lots of Hollywood movies, so I considered the conspiracy theory that maybe my dad's nurse wife poisoned him and made him sign over all his money to her, but I really honestly don't think that's what happened. Other relatives didn't like Grace either, but they knew my dad was totally in love with my mum and that her death utterly broke him. Well, long story short, my dad bequeathed his 5-bedroom house to me even though I wasn't expecting it and didn't ask for it. He also gave a small endowment to each of his sisters and their children. He left about 80% of all his existing money to Grace, which amounted to several hundreds of thousands of dollars. My dad ignored me because he's generous to a fault and still gave me several tens of thousands of dollars, which were of course very useful to me. Grace tried to put on a friendly front, but I could tell that she was angry as heck that she didn't get my dad's house too. That belonged to me and I had the legal papers to prove it. She was especially mad because we live in an extremely upscale and trendy location, and houses are hard to come by and easily sold for a massive profit. During the first few months after my dad's death, I had the nauseating, creepy experience of knowing that Grace was trying to feel me out to see if I might be into a little relationship with her. Gross. She still stayed at the house though, because over the last 3 years, she'd gotten used to living there and acting like she owned it. And even though I officially owned it, I was always away at college and only visited my dad's old house once every couple of months. And even then, it wasn't to see Grace, but to see my cousins who lived just a few miles away. I downplayed the fact that it was really my house, and over the months, I think Grace gradually forgot that she really had no legal right to the house at all. She probably believed that sooner or later, because I never asked her for any of the hundreds of thousands of my dad's dollars that she now had, that I was somehow independently wealthy and would just give up my house to her. I knew that I would eventually hydrogen bomb this female dog when she started dating some new guy only 5 months after my dad was in the ground. And one time when I came home from college after graduating, she and her new boyfriend, some sleazy looking D-bag named Ivan, who was only a few years older than me, were acting like I was a guest in my own house and that they owned it. Well, you know what? I played along. Grace told me she gave away my PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because I'm too old to play with video games. That was when I changed. I don't even know this mother effer, and you give him my PS4 to give away to some other idiot who I also don't know? I quickly changed all my network passwords that same day. I smiled, but I knew what I had to do eventually. She also said that her and Ivan were getting married because she can't just mourn your father forever. I have to move on with my life. I then tell her that I just graduated college and I've already secured employment with a little local firm and that I'll soon find a new place to live. She looks thrilled, especially the part where it looks like I'll soon have a new place to live. Then, in a patronizing way, she tells me, "You always have a place in our house though. You're welcome to stay whenever you please." Yeah, thanks Grace. Really generous of you. What I really say is that I will probably have a new place in 3 months. She says that's wonderful because she intends to go to her homeland to have a wedding with Ivan and afterwards have her honeymoon. She assures me it's a local affair. "Otherwise, I'd invite you, honey. And anyway, I know you're so busy." I congratulate her. She then asks me if I can watch the house for her. Watch my own house? Yeah, sure. But what I really say is, of course I'll take care of the house. I am careful to not say your house though. She and her D-bag fiance, who I am 100% sure is only there for Grace's money, ironically, go on their trip. And I immediately put out advertisements in rental websites offering to lease my house. I hire movers and have all of Grace's furniture and possessions boxed up and put into a storage rental facility. I retain all of my parents' furniture that they had before my dad met Grace. Locks changed. All of them. Within days, I am inundated with dozens of inquiries regarding my amazing furnished house with fantastic views. I rent it to a wonderful young family. a barrister and his schoolteacher wife, and their 2 preteen children. They pay me their first and last month's rent and sign a lease for a year. I warn them about my crazy stepmom who thinks this is her house, but I present them with contact information to my lawyer, the same lawyer my dad retained, in case they need any assurance that I'm on the level. I also give my lawyer the information about the storage facility, including the fact that I generously paid 4 months of storage in advance, which is a whole month longer than Grace's Czech honeymoon adventure. I then found a great apartment in the city near my new place of work. There I met a woman in a restaurant I frequent at night after a long workday. We've been dating 6 months now and are engaged to be married. Grace, of course, tried to shriek and cause trouble when she realized she got kicked out of my house, but my lawyer quickly shut her mouth without me ever having to speak to her garbage face again. From what I hear, her and her trash husband left the country, and I assume they're blowing through my dad's money and will soon be broke like chavs usually become when they taste a little bit of what they think is the good life. So maybe Grace will go and try and exploit some other lonely man into giving her his money. Speaking of money, the house that I rent out is generating so much that I'm not only able to help pay for my cousin's college, but I moved into a larger apartment of my own, together with my fiance. I love my job, but really, I could survive solely on renting my dad's old house. And to think, if Grace had only been cooler and nicer, I might have let her stay at the house, just to be a good sport. And definitely if she stayed the heck out of my room. But no, she had to act all proprietary, so I had to make her homeless as a wedding gift. Oh, and just a little postscript, I bought another PS4. Even though I didn't even use my old one that much. It didn't matter. It wasn't for Grace to give away. You don't give away other people's things. You give away your own things. Which is why I chose to kick Grace out of my house. Because it's mine. And I decide who stays here. And there you go, guys. That is why you never steal someone else's PlayStation, because it could end up costing you your home. I mean, to be fair, obviously, this woman seems like an absolute cow anyways, just leeching on a man that is mourning the death of his wife. Look, maybe we don't know enough context there. Maybe that's just the way it came across. Maybe she was nice. Who knows? Certainly doesn't sound it. And one thing that I absolutely love is that Ivan the Great is doing the exact same thing to her that she did to your father. It's beautiful. You can see it coming from a mile away. She's got mug written on her forehead, the crazy cow. I mean, you could even call her an absolute disgrace. But that wouldn't be a good joke, so don't call her that. Anyway, let's move on to our second story. All right, then, now moving on to our second story. Now, to be honest with you guys, this has probably happened to quite a few of you listening, watching right now. But anyway, apologies if it might hit close to home. We've all been there. Sticking a girl who's been using me with a fat bill. I've really liked this girl for a while that I met at a lifeguard certification course. And I talked to her while I was there, and we, I thought at least, ended up hitting it off. We exchanged numbers and social media and all that, and we messaged for a few weeks before I asked her out to a movie, which she accepted. We'd been going on casual dates, nothing too serious, and we weren't hanging out at my place or her place, even though I'd hinted at the idea, for a few weeks, before one of her friends, someone that was also at the lifeguarding course that I met and kept in contact with because he was cool, sends me this screenshot. Alright then, so let's have a look at this screenshot. As you can see, text messages, "Aren't you an OP going out now?" And then the girl replies, "Not really, but as long as he keeps paying for everything, I'll let him take me out more. Girls gotta eat." Oh, why you gotta do him like that? She's just, yeah, hands up in the air, getting free food, I guess, not really interested in the guy. Sucks to see, man, sucks to see. Anyway, her friend said he felt bad for me because I was nice and that she does this often to other dudes. After seeing this, I asked her to go on a nice date with me to a hibachi grill restaurant, $20 to $40 plates, and premium desserts are served here. I got the most expensive thing they had, and so did she. We both got fancy ice cream and multiple refills on drinks. I complimented her a lot and smiled consistently before getting up to go to the bathroom and leaving. I was also her ride. About 45 minutes after, I get furious text from her saying that she had to have her mum come down and pay for it because she didn't have the money on her and that we were done. Look, I know it's not a lot, and it sucks because I thought she was actually into me, but it felt pretty nice leaving her that way. Now look, I know that some of you watching right now probably think that was a little bit over the top, a little bit too harsh, bit immature, but in my opinion, it was nothing short of exceptional. That's karma right there. Look, if you're gonna accept meals off someone who's paying for them, that's one thing, and that's okay, but only if you're actually interested in the person and dating them and, you know, having some sort of future with them at least. You can't just accept free meals while you're kind of just, you know, towing them along, not really interested in them at all, just getting the free food. Nah, come on, that's so disrespectful. Yo, comment down below, guys. Have you ever been in OP's situation, you know, where maybe you go for a few dates with a girl and you're paying for the meals, and then after a while she's just like, yeah, by the way, I never fancied you. Well, no, yeah, me neither. Anyway, let's carry on. You know, it's actually quite weird. Some of the comments below the story are saying, oh, you should never have done that. Maybe she was just making her mind up. But no, she clearly had already made her mind up, as shown by those texts, right? And I think it's just bad, leading you on, causing you to spend so much money for no reason eventually. Like, she knows that you like her, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. So it's pretty obvious she's just using you. Sorry, dude. Happens to the best of us. All right, then, now moving on to our final story of today's episode. How I ended up with my boss's job. I was working for an advertising agency, a pretty big one, and I had an unethical manager. Well, when I started out and met him, I realized that he was going to be one of the most unethical managers that I've ever dealt with. He'd order his sales reps to do things that would increase his bonuses, which are based on margins. For example, say a client decided to buy product XYZ and their spend was $2,000 a month. He'd want the agent to put up products ABC and keep the spend at $2,000, even though the client didn't agree to that. The fact is, the clients generally wouldn't notice, but if they did, it could cost you your job. I was the guy that refused his demands. He'd tell me to cheat the clients and I would refuse. He'd get mad, I wouldn't care. This went on for quite a while. Now, there is something that I don't tell people very often. I live in a one-party consent state, which means so long as I'm aware a conversation is being recorded, I can record it without informing the other party. Now, I had just upsold my largest client, making him even larger, but I didn't sell the products my boss wanted me to sell. He demanded I switch things around. I refused. I told him I sold the client XYZ. That's what we agreed to. I'm not going to change that without the customer's permission. His exact words were, "If the customer, this is your largest client. I need him on ABC or I'm not going to make my number." I'm sorry, but you and I both know ABC isn't right for this client, and that's why he didn't buy it. You're fired. If you can't follow instructions, you're fired. After confirming he was dead serious, I said, "If you do that, I'll have your job by the end of the month." I went home, and I didn't think he'd go through with it. But sure as heck, next morning, I'm locked out of all our systems. I call tech support and get told that I've been fired. So who do I call? Well, I call our regional vice president and tell him I have several recordings I think he should listen to. Remember, my boss ordering me to do unethical things wasn't uncommon. So I meet up with my RVP and play 6 different recordings that I'd saved, showing my manager was pushing his agents to break the law. To which my RVP leaned back in his chair and let out a sigh, knowing he had to fire my manager. Having a sales manager that is forcing his reps to break the law is just bad business. At which point I asked for my job back. He agreed that I would get my job back and asked me to take the week off and call him on Monday. He told me he'd talk to payroll and make sure I got paid for this week as well. FYI, he fulfilled all of his promises with me, although I missed the payday but got back pay later, so I was fine with that. That Monday, I come into our Monday morning meeting in which my RVP was there, and he informed the entire team that my boss had been fired, and why. He also mentioned that if anyone wanted to apply for his job, there was now an opening. So I, of course, applied, and after 3 rounds of interviews, I got my promotion. Sure as heck, I was right. I did have my boss's job by the end of the month. It was glorious the first day, walking into his office and sitting in his nice, big, comfy chair. Honestly, I don't know OP's gender, and it's 2021, so I'm not about to assume and get myself cancelled, but the balls on OP, oh my god, they're just insane. to say when you're being fired, if you fire me, I'll have your job by the end of the month, and then to go through with it, it's sensational behavior of the highest accordion. And also, did you know, according to recent studies, most people won't realize that there was an instrument at the beginning of that sentence. Another unbelievable stat. It's incredible. OP, you're a legend. I'm kind of waffling now. Probably best to end the video. But you know, I might just keep going. Who really cares? I'm just, flummoxed by the balls of OP. You could just hold them in your hands. Imagine saying that to your boss. Yeah, look, I get it. Obviously, OP has dirt on him and can get him fired, and they probably know that, but also, that's not set in stone, right? Yeah, you have the recordings, but who knows? The VP might not listen to you. They might just say, no, you're fired, don't want any contact anymore. It's incredible. And then, to apply for the job, and get it. It's elite. It is elite, guys. I'm sorry. Entitled mum lets her son destroy a 100-year-old antique table. I, a 24-year-old woman, previously posted in r/childfree about one of my mother's younger friends, an entitled mum in her early 40s, who I first knew as carefree and wonderful until she had her first kids. That child ended up being a complete brat with her mother's encouragement. But the entitled mum had another child, a son, who's now 4 years old, who I kind of liked because he wasn't as intense as his older sibling. As of last night, that has changed. For context, my mother's greatest joy in life, other than her kids, is antiquing. She dresses every room in her house very carefully and will stop at every vintage shop around to find a piece of furniture, sometimes using road trips to find new antique stores and examine what's inside. I used to hate going with mum to these stores, but since she took all 3 of us kids and told us that these used to belong to other people, I think it gave us an early respect for other people's things. We were never the kids to break stuff or jump on furniture in our homes or anyone else's, and I'm pretty sure that that contributed to it. When she was pregnant with my oldest sibling in 1990, mum found a small circular wooden table with 3 curved legs topped with a circle of marble. The shop proprietor told her it was 70 years old, so she bought it for a song, shined it up, and stuck it in her living room, where it immediately became a staple of our house. The coffee table lasted her through 3 kids' college graduations, a move in 2000, and countless family parties and events. Still shiny and looking new and gorgeous. It's as much a part of the family now as any of us kids. Now to last night. The entitled mum's birthday recently occurred. So, since she'd given mum a birthday celebration last month, mum decides to return the favour, inviting the entitled mum, her husband, and their kids to our house for lobster. Already, I'm not a fan of this. Whenever the entitled mum and her kids come over, my mum makes a serious effort to give the kids something fun to do while the adults talk. We have a collection of colouring books, blocks, dolls, Legos, puzzles, action figures, and a TV in the basement from when my siblings and I were growing up. And mum even bought them some new toys herself. But inevitably, the kids would play down there for 2 minutes and then come to their mum to complain that they're bored, then proceed to wreak havoc on our house. My parents, who the entitled mum sees as her kids' aunt and uncle, have warned the kids many times not to jump on things, but they do not listen. The oldest kid is also very combative and likes to pull hair and hit people, as I learned firsthand, and broke a holiday decoration given to my dad by his late mother. Of course, the entitled mum coddles her kids and coos that they're the best in the world and all that BS. I've told my mum repeatedly that I don't want to be around the kids or their parents, but she brushes it off. In fact, she likes to tease me for not interacting with the entitled mum and not coming downstairs when she visits, and says that the entitled mum shouldn't get in the way of me living my life. I live with my folks and I'm invited to attend the party, but I make my usual choice of opting out. Since I've just finished the first week of a new job, I intend to celebrate with a day at the bookstore and a night with friends. But yesterday morning, as I was preparing to leave, mum asked why I was going to leave her to deal with the 2 kids by herself. I told her that I wasn't going to let them get in the way of me living my life. She laughed and wished me a good day, and I left. My day was wonderful. I spent the morning and early afternoon at my favourite bookstore, the evening with my friends at a wine bar, and the night with them at a karaoke room. I come home around 11:30 that night and enter from a door in our sunroom, where my parents are asleep on the couch watching TV. I wake them up, tell them about my day, and they seem genuinely happy it went so well. To be polite, I ask how the party went. my folks get quiet and look at each other, and my mother, sounding very drained, tells me to go into the living room, the next room over. Confused, I look through the doorway and immediately see why. The beautiful table, now a century old, is broken. Its 3 curved wooden legs were bisected and splintered. There's a small crack in the marble top, and a collection of wood shards litter the carpets. What happened? I asked. Earlier that day, around 6:30 p.m, my dad and the entitled mum's husband went to pick up my grandpa, plus a steamer for the lobster. While they were away, mum had worked to settle the kids into the basement and reminded them not to jump on anything, then gone to the living room to converse with the entitled mum. As they are talking, my mother leaves to go to the restroom at the other end of the house. She stops in the kitchen before returning and hears a crash in the living room. Mum runs in. And lo and behold, the 4-year-old son had become bored, come upstairs to the living room, and started jumping on furniture, including the ancient table, while his entitled mum just watched. My mother is predictably horrified and stares as the entitled mum examines her son for injuries and reassures my mum that the kid is fine. Mum gets sick to her stomach, takes the son aside and tells him in a serious but not yelling voice that Auntie is very disappointed in him and that he knows the rules at my house. The entitled mum overhears and berates my mum, telling her that she is the only one who can speak that way to her kids, before cuddling her son and telling him that he's going to be okay. Mum then outright asks the entitled mum if she herself told the kids not to jump on furniture at our house. She replies casually, "No, I didn't tell them not to." The husbands return and all 3 men are shocked. The entitled mum's husband immediately offers to pay a carpenter to fix the table, which my mother accepts. Dinner goes on, but it's cold and impersonal between mum and the entitled mum. This morning, the entitled mum, her son, and the husband came by our house to give mum a bouquet of flowers, an apology, and the number of a carpenter who they'll pay for. She puts on a smile and says thank you, but she's very upset nonetheless. My dad doesn't want the kid in our house again until he's older. Mum says she'll be keeping her distance from the entitled mum for the time being, since she can't teach her kids to respect other people's property or discipline them properly. My heart breaks for my mum. I don't plan on having kids, but if you do, please teach them at an early age to respect other people and their things. Oh yeah, look, I mean, you can obviously get this kind of like semi-repaired. I don't think it'll be by a carpenter, but by someone that knows what they're doing. I'm sure they can do a good job on it and, you know, get it close to how it was before. But this is an antique. You know, you're never gonna get it in that perfect condition that it was in before this idiot of a son. Sorry, I don't blame the kid. This idiot of a mother let her son jump on it and just destroy it. Like, why go through all the hassle of letting your kid jump on furniture when you know your friend is massively into antiques anyway, and these items of furniture can't just be replaced like that? It's not as if it's like some desk from IKEA. No, it's 100 years old, by the way. Why just not tell your kid in the first place to not do these things and avoid the hassle of him obviously breaking things? He's 4 years old. He's gonna do that if you don't tell him not to. Come on, it's so like illogical, I don't get it. Right then, now moving on to our second story of today's episode. Entitled parent throws coffee on me when I'm half her age. So, this happened years ago now, at my first job, but I figured I'd finally post it. It remains, to this day, 17 years later, the worst customer experience I've ever had. So, 15-year-old me has their first job at an amusement park. I worked in the games department, and this day I was working one where you fish magnets out of the water that moves around. Pick up yellow, you get a small prize. Pick up a red magnet, you get a medium one. You pick up both red and yellow, it counts as yellow, you get a small prize, and shaking the magnets off to try again gets you banned from the park for cheating at the games. People, needless to say, don't realize this. So the first time, we always just tell people, hey, just so you're aware, shaking the magnets off can be considered cheating. So for next time, make sure you just leave them on, okay? Now we get to the main story. So, an entitled kid who is about 9 or 10 and his entitled mum, who is early to mid-30s, walk up to the booth. And my co-worker takes the money, gives the kid the stick with a magnet, and goes to help someone on the other side, while I'm restocking our medium price display. The kid goes for a red magnet, and catches about 6 yellow magnets instead. Well, he doesn't want a small prize, obviously. So he looks at my coworker, grins when he sees she isn't paying attention to him, and starts shaking them off. I, however, did see, so I grabbed the small prize bin, walk over, and put my hand on the stick, not on him. Okay, go ahead and pick your small prize. Just so you know, too, shaking the magnets off can be considered cheating. So for excuse me, the entitled mum interrupts. How dare you accuse my son of cheating? He doesn't cheat. Oh, sorry, she then starts to yell. He would never cheat, you frickin' dog. How dare you accuse him of that? He's a good boy, you little idiot. I'm getting you fired for this, you little frickin' female dog. She takes the lid off her cup while yelling at me. I hadn't noticed at the time because I was 15 getting screamed at by a random adult and threw her half-full coffee at me. It wasn't burning hot, but it was still warm. By this point, of course, other workers in nearby games had more than noticed, along with a small group of adults who were playing the games too. She seemed to realize she probably shouldn't have thrown the coffee when I burst into tears and just started sobbing on the spot. I mean, I was 15 and at the time not emotionally stable by any stretch. So she grabs her entitled kid's arm and drags him off, throwing the small prize back into the booth without aiming. I'm honestly not sure where it landed as I wasn't in a good state. Must have been Texas then, I guess. Okay, can I say that? No. The co-worker at the whack-a-mole station ran back to call security since we had a phone behind the whack-a-mole booth. And the people at the milk jug toss and scatterball stations ran over to help me out of the booth, with the co-workers at our booth, and into where the phone also was, to get me out of the public eye while security came and took everyone's descriptions of the entitled mum. Fortunately, no one had left and security got to us fast. The entitled mum was caught up with soon enough, as they did a park-wide search and took her name and picture for the do not admit list. I didn't think to press any charges at the time. In retrospect, I wish I had. I went home early too, since I couldn't stop crying until long after my dad picked me up. He got me ice cream later and watched a really bad horror movie with me. It was our dad-daughter thing. Unfortunately, I'd had the following couple of days off anyways. I have never forgotten this incident, and it remains my worst customer service experience. Though hardly the only time I've been yelled at, it is the only time I've been physically assaulted on the job. Wherever Karen is these days, I hope she realizes what a monster she is. But I doubt that. She'd be in her late 40s or early 50s by now, and now that I'm the age she was at the incident, I cannot even imagine yelling like that at someone half my age over something so minuscule. Yeah, OP, I'm not surprised that you wouldn't do something like that right now. I mean, I wouldn't either, and I doubt that you watching right now would do it either, because it's ridiculous. Throwing a coffee over a 15-year-old girl because you're annoyed at a game at a theme park. Are you dumb? Well, to answer my own question, yes, she is. There's a reason none of us would do it. It's because we're not really stupid Karens. Like, yeah, you can be annoyed if you want because the game rules are slightly confusing, I do admit. But doing that? No way. No way. And now moving on to our final story of today's episode. Cult talkers think they can scare me out of my new home. I should give you guys just a little backstory on how I ended up in this situation. I grew up in Scientology. My parents joined back in 1991 and moved to the States to be involved more than they could from the UK. In 2015, when I was 15, I joined the Sea Org and signed a billion-year contract. I know how insane that is, but it was something my parents were pressuring me to do because they thought it would allow me to be the best Scientologist I could be. But last August, I saw my opportunity to leave and I took it. I was sent out with a group of other Sea Org members to confront some people who had been declared as suppressive people, SPs, who were outside the building. One of them said they had a permit to film some stuff in the streets, and since it was public that we couldn't stop them, and that it was in the car parked about 5 minutes away from where we were. One of the women I'd come out with told me to go with the guy and check it out, so I did. When we got around the corner, I told the guy I wanted to leave, but hadn't been able to because there was always someone watching. He suggested that maybe, since we were out of sight, maybe we could get into his car and he would drive me to a hotel, get me a room so I could plan where I could go after a couple of days. I took the opportunity and I got into his car. I finally felt so much freedom that I'd never felt before. He, as it turns out, had also been a Scientologist and had escaped from Gold Base years ago, so he understood my situation very well. Now, once I figured out that I wanted to go to Washington, he got in contact with some friends of his who were able to get me there without Scientology having any way of tracing my movements. And I've been here ever since. I live in a nice neighborhood, well, at least to where I had been before, and I've managed to get a job working in a coffee shop. I've been so happy to be free, but I never fully stopped looking over my shoulder. I know the policies regarding people like me, and I've been keeping an eye out for them ever since I left. 2 months ago, I noticed that a car with tinted windows was following me. I knew it was down to Scientology. They'd somehow found out where I'd moved and were trying to gather information on me. Last week, they finally knocked on my door. Even though I knew it was going to happen sooner or later, I was shaking. My neighbor, who's always been really kind to me, was over. She comes over sometimes just to check on me, and she'll bring me food if she feels like I haven't eaten properly. She's basically been like a mum to me, and I love her for it. I opened the door and things got really uncomfortable real fast. It was a couple of entitled stalkers from the Scientology group standing in front of me. Your parents have been worried about you, and you're hiding out here. Why? I'm not hiding. I just don't want to be in a cult anymore. Liar. You are a criminal. You broke your contract and you fled. You are evil. My kind neighbor then comes to the door and interrupts. Hold on a minute, stop shouting. OP is not evil and she's free to live her life as she pleases. Now leave her property or I will call the police. The second entitled stalker holds a camera pointed at my face. You are a suppressive person. You may not set foot in any Scientology building again. If you do, we will have you charged with harassment. I was confused by this. But you're the ones who tracked me down. I know the policies. I know I'm an SP. I know about being disconnected with my family. So what do either of us gain from you being here? My neighbor said, put the camera down. No. My neighbor then closes the door in their faces and goes to close the curtains, as I told her that they would probably try filming through my windows. I went and closed all other curtains in my home, and after my neighbor left, I locked my doors too. They are still watching my house from a car across the street, and I feel uncomfortable about going outside. I know what methods can be used by Scientologists who are fair gaming an SP. I know now, after watching Going Clear and Leia Ramini's show, that my experience with them after leaving is tame, but it's still pretty creepy. Why they feel entitled to follow people around to a point where I'm basically a prisoner in my own home, I don't know. But I wish they'd leave me alone. I'm not sure what information they've gathered on me, but I know whatever it is will have been sent back, and it will be used against me in some way. But until they try and use it, I have no way to really do anything. If anyone has any advice, please let me know. Oh my God, OP, I'm so sorry that you're in this situation. This is so effed. Like, my God. Guys, put yourself in OP's shoes for a moment. There are people across the street in a car, perma watching his gaff. What the heck? Like, you've done amazingly to escape in the first place. I have to commend you for that. What bravery, you know, great quick thinking to get out of there, you know, in the chance that you could. Fantastic. But now to feel like you're being watched for the rest of your life, always having to watch over your shoulder, like, oh my God, man. What is this? I need to do some more research into Scientology as a whole. Guys, if you know more about this cult and, you know, what they do and their practices and how they clearly stalk people who leave, comment down below and enlighten me, because I don't know too much, I've got to be honest. I'm going to do some more research as soon as I finish recording this video, if I'm completely honest. But wow, what would you advise him to do right now? OP, that is. I don't know what you can do. Call the police? Apart from that, I've got nothing. But I don't really think that the police are going to be able to do much. The car's just going to drive away. Then it will come back. What can OP do? Entitled mother wants to monitor 20-year-old daughter's texts. I am 20 years old. I moved out of my parents' house roughly 2 years ago, and I live in a house with 2 roommates. I am completely independent from my parents. I pay my rent for my house. I have my own medical insurance. I own my car and pay my own car insurance. I don't even have to ask mummy and daddy for grocery money. Both of my roommates and I each have our own pets. We've got 3 dogs and a cat amongst the 3 of us. We've had some conflict about the animals. I've been visiting my parents for about a month, so I've been keeping up pretty steady contact with the roomies through text. My mum started asking about what I was talking about with my roommates. She knows about the conflict, and I just described the conversation to get her on the same page. But apparently that wasn't good enough. She asked to see the text between my roommates and I. She'd also asked to see my text a few nights before, and then she picked apart every word and made me feel terrible. So I said no. I told her she shouldn't have to see her 20-year-old daughter's text to feel secure, and that I was setting a boundary and wouldn't be showing her my texts anymore. At this point, she started calling me immature, ungrateful, and secretive. I'd been working remotely while visiting and was on the clock during this conversation, so I just walked back to my desk. My mum went up to her room, slammed the door, and started screaming at my dad, "She's a child! She's an immature child!" over and over again. Wow, what a wonderful start to today's Entitled Parents episode. Let me tell you, my sister is 20 years old, and if my mum, from out of nowhere, started demanding to see her texts, well, that would probably be World War III, and I'd move out with immediate effect. Now moving on to our second Entitled Parent story. Entitled Dad threatens to beat me up because I charged his daughter for gas on a rental car. Long-time lurker here. I love reading all of these stories, since I love watching entitled people get what they deserve. Who doesn't? After all of the things I've read, it got me thinking if I have any stories to share. And it turns out I have tons of great stories from the various places that I've worked. One place in particular was a national rental car chain, where I have the best stories. Before working there, I thought the industry was just going to be full of business guys and vacationers, so I wouldn't really have to deal with much rubbish. Boy, was I young and dumb. This particular branch was hit or miss. Some days we would be crazy busy, others we'd be so slow we'd take out for oil changes just for the heck of it, to give us something to do. On one particular day, both my manager and assistant manager asked if they could go grab food for all of us, and if I could man the shop. Everyone there was super chill, even the managers, so there was a lot of just chilling around. I of course agree and chill, look at my phone, when the office phone starts to ring. It's some older gentleman who asked for me specifically. Speaking, I say. Our conversation goes a little something like this.
Is this OP?
Yeah, how can I help?
Well, my daughter just returned a rental car at your location, and I see a $25 fuel charge on there that shouldn't be. I'm expecting a refund right now, or I'll be giving corporate a call, and maybe you'll listen to them.
I'm still keeping my cool at this point. Not a problem, sir. Let me check your file to verify that you didn't prepay for the fuel. Let me put you on a quick hold. The entitled dad starts screaming something along the lines of,
"Don't put me on hold. No one puts me on hold."
Beep goes on hold anyway. I then check his file. The notes clearly say that fuel was declined, and the customer signed a line stating that they agree to a $25 refueling fee if they don't return it with the amount of fuel that it was sent out with. "Hi sir," I say. "I've reviewed your file, and unfortunately I'm not able to issue a refund, because your daughter agreed to pay the fuel charge if the vehicle wasn't returned at the level we sent it out at. Apologies for the inconvenience, but we do make this clear to our customers, since this is a common but understandable source of confusion." Now, had this guy started the convo off by not being a POS, I would have easily given him his refund, but I refused to let entitled mofos win.
What the F? Oh, I see. You just saw a young girl walk into your rental car place, and you thought that you could scam her? Well, how does it feel robbing a young girl of $25? I'll bet you have the money in your pocket right now.
Sir, unfortunately, that is our policy. We do not scam our customers and clearly indicate what you will be paying for before the rental. We also make sure to tell you how to avoid the fees. In this case, our advice was not followed, so we'll not be able to process a refund for you.
Let me talk to a manager, now.
Sorry sir, they're not in the office right now, but I'll tell you, they will give you the same answer. They should be back in about 20 to 30 minutes if you want to call back then. Again, super chill managers, so I knew I had nothing to worry about, and that of course they would take my side.
What the heck? No, some of us have things to do today. I don't want to spend my day at some rental car place. You guys are scumbags. You know what? I'm coming down there right now, and I'm going to have a little talk with you face to face. You're not going to be so tough when I come down.
Sorry, he just said that some of us have things to do today, yet he's willing to come down to the car rental place. Makes a lot of sense. Make it make sense, please. Now, unfortunately, at this moment, all I could do was audibly laugh at this guy, which only made it worse. I'm looking forward to it, sir.
You just think you're so tough, don't you? You've got no idea the people in high places that I know in this state. I now know your first and last name, buddy. I wouldn't be laughing.
Sir, if you have any problem with me, I invite you to come down and resolve it in person. I'll be here until 6 this evening.
I'm coming right now, buddy. You think I'm not serious?
Alright then, see you soon. And I hang up. About 20 minutes later, my manager gets back and I tell him what happened. My manager burst out laughing and just said, "Can we hear?" We went back and listened to the recording and both my manager and assistant were just dying laughing. "Were you just threatened over $25? "Apparently," I joked. We all shared a good laugh and honestly forgot about it for the rest of the afternoon until I saw a car pull up and I saw a familiar girl get out of the car with what looked like her mum. Guess who? It was the entitled dad's daughter and her mum. I peered into the car to see that entitled dad pouting in the passenger seat. He looked like a child that was told no for the first time. The best part is, he threatened me and then wouldn't even get out of the car to face me himself. He sends his wife and daughter in to do his dirty work. This should give you some indication about the type of guy we're dealing with here. The entitled mum walks in with the entitled daughter and starts screaming, berating my assistant manager. "Your employee needs to be fired. He scammed my daughter out of money and we want it back." Mom, OP already explained to you why we can't do that. I'll give you 2 choices. You can leave now on your own, or I can call the police and they can tell you to leave. Up to you. "Okay then, F you. We're never using this rental car place again. I can't wait until we call corporate and tell them all about this little incident." She furiously leaves the shop and goes back to her car. This is where the most amazing thing happened and made me believe in karma. She was so angry and flustered as she was backing out that she slammed into the back of my assistant manager's car, smashing the bumper. Easily a total loss for a car of that age and value. My assistant manager runs out to inspect the damage, only to find nothing on his car, not even a single scratch. The entitled parents and their daughter all had to wait for a tow truck to arrive in our parking lot, and it was amazing to watch the look on their faces while they dealt with the side effects of their trashiness. As if that wasn't enough. Want to know what the best part was? 2 weeks later, I get a call from that same entitled dad, asking if we had any rental cars available. It was hilarious how he tried to act as if nothing had happened and returned after he vowed he wouldn't. He actually rented fairly regularly after that during my time there, and we never had another issue with him. He was even pleasant on some occasions. This experience must have been humbling for him. Anyway, that's my story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As I'm thinking about my past, I realized that I've actually got plenty of stories. So if you guys like this one and want to hear more, I'd appreciate the positive feedback. I want to hear more immediately, sir. Well then guys, if you do want to see more from OP, to be fair, great story, well written. I loved reading it. Do comment down below that you want to see more and drop a like on this video so that I know to look out for more stories from this man. Speaking of men, it's actually very funny. It's almost confusing, right? This entitled dad was like so mental. He just went crazy, shouting at people for no reason, demanding a massive $25 refund. And then after this huge debacle, you know, where their car gets totaled, he's like, actually, I've learned my lesson here. And now that we no longer have a car, I'm gonna need another rental car. So if you take me back, guys, at the rental place, yeah, I'll go back to being a normal customer who doesn't shout and abuse people. Cheers. I mean, it would have been better if he didn't do all that abusing in the first place, but anyway, at least he got to some form of solid conclusion. I don't know. All right then, story number 3. Random butthole thinks he's entitled to my medical history. I want to preface this by saying that it's appallingly common for disabled people to be asked personal medical questions by total strangers, and that nothing about that is okay. Just don't do that, like ever. Far too many able people seem to think that being disabled in public means that my life story is public property, and it makes going anywhere far more stressful and tiring than it should be. To anyone who does this, your curiosity does not justify or excuse your rude, invasive questions, regardless of your intentions. 1 in 4 people has a disability. Disabilities and disabled people are normal, and I'm sick to death of being treated like a sideshow curiosity. Now, with that context in mind, I'm sure you won't be surprised to know that I had absolutely zero patience for today's entitled butthole's accusational nosiness. I was in a pharmacy with my walking cane, And as the person being served before me was taking some time, I went to sit down in one of the chairs they have for people waiting on prescriptions. I dropped mine off earlier in the day, so I was only there for pickup. As I'd been standing around, I'd noticed an elderly man, can't have been younger than 75, on a mobility scooter, scrutinizing me. When I sat down, he drove his scooter over to me and, without so much as a hi, he asked,
"What's a healthy young thing like you doing with one of those?"
gesturing at my cane. His tone was actually accusational and full of suspicion. As I said, this is something that most disabled people often have to deal with, and that goes triple for young disabled people. So many older people seem to think that young people just can't be disabled, I guess. It makes zero goddamn sense, but whatever. My point is that after years of experience, I've got a list of well-rehearsed responses to draw from. So, without missing a beat, I told him, my medical history is none of your business. He seemed pretty taken aback and scoffed, saying,
"I was only asking, there's no need to be so rude."
Again, having been here before, I said, no, you asking a total stranger invasive questions about their personal, medical situation, that's rude. Me declining to answer is not. It's called having reasonable boundaries. He scoffed again and glared at me for a bit, seemingly unable to think of a comeback. But then he did the thing that prompted me to post this otherwise run-of-the-mill encounter here. While maintaining eye contact and glaring daggers at me, he slowly reversed his scooter, beeping all the way, back towards the far end of the front counter, where he'd been to start with. Only he bumped into the woman who'd been ahead of me en route, ruining his bizarrely dramatic exit and sparking an entirely separate argument. It was honestly farcical. Not much happened after that. His prescriptions were ready first, but this guy insisted on glaring at me the entire goddamn time. Of course, I gave him a wave as he departed, and he flushed red with rage, but said nothing. Moral of the story, disabled people don't owe you anything. Leave us the heck alone, and for crying out loud, don't ask us personal questions like you're entitled to our medical histories. Now look, I'm not the sort of person that would randomly go up to a disabled person and ask them how they got their disability. That is very rude. But even me, knowing that I'd never do that, it's still important to hear from a disabled person how annoying that can be. I mean, maybe you're with your mate or, a family member and they do it. And you think about this story and you think, you know what, I'm going to intervene here and tell my friend, relative, whatever, to not ask these horribly intrusive personal questions that they have absolutely no business of knowing. Also, with the Paralympics on at the moment, I thought I'd bring you guys this story to help raise a little bit of awareness among our small, viewership community about disabled people and how they feel when they get asked very personal questions. Look, I imagine some of you watching right now are disabled. Comment down below. Is it very annoying? I imagine it is. And now moving on to our final story of today's episode. Lady gets mad because I'm speaking Norwegian to a tour group in Norway. First of all, I think my English is pretty good for it being my second language, but I still may make mistakes. Second, this took place a couple of years ago, so my memory and translations may not be exact, but you should get the general idea. And thirdly, all conversations are translated to English, especially the ones between the director and me. Background and story. About 2 years ago, when I was in university, before the virus, I worked as a tour guide in Oslo during summers. We would take groups out on a bus through the city, then get on a boat and continue the tour from there. When the group first formed, I would ask if there were any English speakers who didn't understand Norwegian. If there were, I would conduct the tour in Norwegian first, then give the English equivalents. If there weren't, I would just do the whole thing in Norwegian, but also point out in English, we all speak English, right, that there was an audio system they could listen to in multiple languages. So, Germans could hear it in German, French people in French, etc. I think there are about 10 different languages in all to choose from. I eventually learned how to say each language we offered in their native language, and then motioned to the headphones and guide in front of them that said how to turn the audio to their preferred language. So, I asked my group and a few people raised their hands. I don't recall if this lady was one of them. So, the tour started and I would point out the sites and describe them in Norwegian, then English. However, as I was giving the Norwegian explanation, this lady would yell out, "English!" After a couple times, I finally stopped myself and said, "In a minute, please wait," though I'd already spoken English on the trip, including the opening talk. This woman, though, continued through the entire tour. Though this was not a supper cruise, which we had in the evenings, we still had a waitstaff that circulated around and got people snacks and drinks. They normally ask first in Norwegian what people want, then switch to English, or in some cases Swedish or German, until they learned which language went with which customer. When they got to this lady, she gave her order and then said, "Make the guide speak English. Me and my kids can't understand her." When they pointed out that I was speaking English after the Norwegian, she said, "How do I know she's saying the same thing though? She should just speak English the whole time." The next day, my director, I don't know the exact translation of his title, called me to his office before I began my first outing of the day and said that he had received a comment card about me not speaking English and that this had ruined the tour for a woman and her kids. He asked me if this was true, and I said no. I spoke both Norwegian and English on the trip after I found out there were some non-Norwegian speakers. Since the tour for the day hadn't gone out yet, I got 2 servers, including the one who had served them, who came up and verified that I had spoken in both languages. My director just shook his head, tore up the comment card, and told me to move on with my day. I wish I'd gotten the chance to have a direct confrontation with this lady. Many people would stop and thank me or ask questions as they left the boat at the end of the tour. But this lady was not one of them. She just resorted to speaking badly about me on a comment card. Oh, look, I'm not positive it was her, but the clues all point in her direction. So, that is the story of how I got in trouble for not speaking English in Norway. Again, I'm sorry for grammar mistakes and thanks for reading. Pretty sure there was 0 grammar mistakes in this entire piece, and that is a point that I'm going to touch on right now. Alright guys, some of you may know if you've been on my channel for a long time now that I actually went to Norway. I think it was 2 or 3 years, well it can't have been 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I might put a picture up right now, and yeah, I think it was actually before COVID. Well no, it definitely was. So yeah, about 2 years ago I went to Norway, and of course, as you can probably imagine, I speak no Norwegian. What a massive shock. However, because of the way the world works, I guess, or just these people being very, very selfless, people in Norway are taught English at school, and pretty much everyone that you'll come across in Norway speaks English. It's pretty incredible, to be honest. So that meant that when I went there and I knew I could speak no Norwegian in Norway, I was really fortunate that Norwegian people could speak English so I could at least interact with them. I felt very guilty, to be honest. I knew none of their language. They knew everything of my language. And like OP right here, they speak it really well, write it really well. Their grammar is perfect. And to be honest, a lot of foreigners' grammar with English and their, general dialect is actually a lot better than a lot of English people. Sorry to say that, but it is true. The point is, this woman should be grateful that this Norwegian person in Norway can even speak English in the first place. That's the point. Why should she speak English to you? That's a real question. You know none of her language. Why should she know yours? You're just being an absolute ignorant pig. That's my opinion. You should feel lucky and fortunate that you don't have to spend years of your life and time learning someone else's language because they've put in the hard work and learnt yours. Crazy, I know. When I was 15, I lied to my school and got my best friend expelled. So, for the backstory, I had this friend who we will just call Chloe for the sake of this post. We'd known each other since we were 4, and our mums are pretty much best friends even today. Chloe was always known as a bit of a problem child. She would constantly lie and get into trouble, whereas I was the complete opposite. I was pretty much a goody two-shoes, as people would say. Even though we were polar opposites, we were still best friends. When Chloe got to about 13, she went a bit off the rails, and her behavior got worse. She started doing things like getting involved with drugs, underage sex, and making up lies about her parents, etc. Because of all of this, her parents lost all trust in her, and so they wouldn't believe anything she had to say to them half the time. Despite all of this, she was still a good friend to me and had my back. My mum didn't like me hanging around with Chloe much anymore, understandably. But because she is close with her mum, there was not much that she could do or say. Anyways, for my confession, we were now both 15 and we're in the last year of school. A lot of people were into smoking weed, and it was talked about all the time. This made me become curious, and I was desperate to smoke a joint for the first time, just to see what it was like. I would have asked Chloe for some, but she was off the stuff by then. and she was just trying to better herself in general by making an effort with schoolwork and being more respectful towards her parents. I'm very shy, and she was the only person I trusted, and I was too embarrassed to ask anyone else. So I ended up finding some myself by getting in contact with a local dealer of some silly app called Whisper. F knows what I was thinking. I think back to this moment all the time and cringe at how stupid and naive I was. Not only was it dangerous to meet some random person off the internet, but I don't know why I just didn't ask Chloe for advice anyway. Long story short, I purchased an 8th from this guy in town, and you're going to laugh at how dumb I was. I literally smoked a joint in my room while my parents were home. I was too stupid to even think about the smell, and obviously I got caught. My parents came into my room and went absolutely mad. They automatically accused Chloe of giving it to me at school and said that they were going to tell her mum and the school first thing in the morning. I tried to tell them where I had really got it from, but they wouldn't believe me and thought I was trying to protect Chloe. I wish I could have shown them some sort of proof that I met a dealer, but by then I deleted all of the evidence, the dealer's number and messages, etc. No matter how hard I tried to convince them, they weren't having it. They just wouldn't believe that their innocent, well-behaved daughter would know where to buy drugs from. Chloe's mum also didn't believe Chloe and sided with my parents too. As everyone thought that the weed was given to me on school grounds, both of our parents had to have a meeting with the head teachers. Then I was forced to tell them some BS story that Chloe had given me the weed in our break time. I felt so bad about doing it, and I knew how screwed up it was, but no one believed me anyway, so I just gave up and went along with everyone else in the end. That was my biggest regrets. Because I'm known as the good kid who never gets in trouble at school, and then there's Chloe with her track record, they automatically believed my parents, and they permanently expelled Chloe from the school for dealing drugs with no proof or anything. They just took mine and my parents' word for it and got rid of her. Flash forward 5 years. I'm now 20, and still nobody knows the truth. I haven't told anyone what really happened, and I don't know if I should. I haven't had any contact with Chloe since that incident. I was banned from hanging out with her after what happened, and she got into quite a lot of trouble, as she wasn't in school anymore, which I blame myself for. Her mum ended up kicking her out about a year after, and she ended up living in a hostel, but she now lives away with her boyfriend as far as I know, and doesn't speak to her family. I think about this every day, and I just feel so guilty and ashamed. My mum and her mum talk all the time, and I go on day outs with her family, and they all think highly with me. If only they knew the truth, that I'd lied and gotten Chloe expelled and stopped her from bettering herself and maybe developing a better relationship with her mum, they would know that I'm actually a terrible human being. This is by far the worst thing I've ever done, and I don't know if I will ever get over the guilt and shame. This is also the first time I've confessed to this, even over the internet. I have no idea how my parents would react if I one day told them the truth, but I don't even think they would believe me still, even as an adult. Oh my god, like where to even start with this story? I don't even know where to begin. It's just, you don't really get this level of depth and guilt in any other subreddits on Reddit. r/confession man, you get stuff like this. You know that this story, this event, this guilt, this, feeling of being so ashamed of yourself has been on OP's mind for the last 5 years, and only now are they, telling it to the world really. Yes, it's on a throwaway account, but at least it's kind of out there now. At least people know about it, I guess. I don't really know what to say in terms of, should you now tell your parents about what happened all that time ago? I think if it was me in that situation, I would. I don't think I'd be able to have something like that on my mind for that long. I mean, to be fair for Chloe, I think she would already know it was you lying, right? Because, she would have been told by the school that she dealt drugs to you, OP, when she knows she didn't, and obviously she didn't. So she would have known that you were lying at that point. So in terms of the relationship with you and her, it seems like it doesn't really exist anymore. That's fine. But yeah, you're right. Your parents actually might still not believe you. If they didn't believe you then, will they believe you 5 years later? I don't even know. If it was me though, I would have to tell someone at this point. I couldn't live the rest of my life having this just on my conscience each and every day, eating me up. No way, I'm telling someone. Right then, now moving on to our second confession of today's episode. I worked for a restaurant, and I would steal money from the register at the end of the night whenever it was over because I was lazy. I worked for an old-fashioned restaurant over 5 years ago for a few years, in a position that I guess could be considered kind of unique by today's standards. I don't want to give many key details for how everything was done for that reason. I'd record all the tables, check amounts, etc. throughout the day. It was all done by hand and very unnecessarily complicated because there was this cool technology available we didn't seem to have though, called a computer. While still doing other normal restaurant duties, at the end of the night, I had to balance all of the cash, paperwork for the restaurant and make sure everything matched everything, pay out everyone, etc. If there was an issue or if something didn't match, we were supposed to go through all of the paperwork, type thousands of different amounts into calculators, cross-check our information, find where the error occurred, and correct it. I was basically an underpaid, everyone's female dog restaurant accountant. But I actually truly did enjoy my job and my co-workers. Well, one night I was extremely exhausted, and the cash balance in the register ended up being like $20 less than it should have been after paying out the buses. I just wanted to freaking go home, so I took $20 from my tips that night and put it into the register so everything matched. I don't know if I calculated their tips wrong or what. Well, after that night, since it saved me so much time, I just took from my tips and put my money in the register anytime it was under. Usually it was just a couple of dollars, and seriously not worth it to me to spend 3 hours trying to fix at 12 AM. However, one night, many weeks later, it ended up being over by like $40, and I pocketed it. In my head, I figured I'd probably taken that much from my own tips to put into the register over the past however long it was. I felt so guilty, but I still did it anyway. I got to go home early. I was so exhausted at the end of the night, it felt worth it to me to do it at the time. Now, I did this for years. I kind of got slightly lazy towards the end because I knew this hack and the register paperwork didn't therefore need to be exactly 100% right. I could forge plus or minus a few dollars. No one would know at all. Now, I don't know if I ended up giving more to the restaurant or taking more. I wouldn't even be able to guess how much on either side. I thought about my deed as little as possible. I never stole money to intentionally steal money, but I guess I did steal to pay myself back, whether or not I ended up earning money. I just put it in when I needed to and took it out when I needed to, so it would match. Look, it doesn't justify it, and I feel like a criminal, and I want to confess. The way the paperwork was done, there's no way they could find out. All numbers went through me, all trust was put in my hands, and they'd never expect me to have done this. Ever. I told one of my co-workers this hack, who actually was a really good guy with good intentions, who had the same position as me at some point. I casually forgot to mention I actually took the overbalance home with me, because even though I was paying back what I'd put in, I was so ashamed to have stolen. It's truly not the kind of person that I view myself to be. I only put money in, I said. He thought my whole plan was absolutely brilliant, and because I wasn't taking money, it technically wasn't morally wrong. If anything, we gave them a few dollars. He took it upon himself to, when the register was over, hide the extra few dollars disguised as tips of a busser with a fake name. Smart, I know. And if the drawer was ever under, he would take from his go home quick funds. He got caught. My supervisor found the fake busser's money. I was asked about this fake person who possibly could be owed like $40 cash. I said I didn't know. He confessed when he was questioned and was fired on the spot. He didn't say a word about me. I've told this to no one else at all until today. It is very difficult to judge someone just based on their actions one time ages ago without, meeting them in real life or knowing them very well and getting to know if they genuinely are a nice person or not. Because as much as OP says that, they weren't stealing and it's not in their nature, sure, that's fine to say that, but how do I know that's actually legit? How do I know that that is true? Like, you could just be saying that. Anyone could say that. A murderer could say, yeah, it's not in my nature to murder. Well, you still murdered, mate. You know what I mean? However, I think the fact that you started OP as giving money, like giving your own money into the register, kind of confirms that you probably are a nice person. So I take that back. With immediate effects, I hope you accept my immediate apology. I am sorry. However, just like the first story, your mate getting fired for it. Not ratting you out, by the way, is unbelievable. Well done to him. But it feels so deep, doesn't it? Because you told him that hack, he did it. You've been doing it for ages. He just started doing it. He's the one that gets caught and fired, and, you know, no one even knows that you told him anything, and you probably kept doing it in future. Mental. My dad asked to borrow my car, then sells it. This was a long time ago. I hardly have any contact with that part of the family anymore, but I do still talk to my dad once in a while. My dad had needed a car for a while, so I loaned him mine. When I went to get the car back, the back end was smashed in. My dad tells me how he was at a red light and the car was rear-ended. Of course, I asked the normal questions about fault and insurance and everything else. He tells me the other guy's insurance company sent him a check for the damages, but it wasn't enough to cover the repairs. That was a lie, so he didn't have the car repaired. Instead, he spent the money. Now, my dad and I have the same first and last name, but a different middle name, so it's easy to see how he could claim the car was his and have the check written to him. When I told my dad that he should have just let me know about the accident and let me handle the claim, he says, "Why should you get anything? You weren't in an accident. I was." We had an argument about that, but none of my dad's arguments was even anywhere close to being valid. He also just wasn't listening to anything that I was saying. I asked my dad to leave the car at his house for a few days, and I said that I would arrange to have it picked up and repaired. A couple of days later, I went to his house, but I didn't see the car, so I thought he wasn't home. When I knocked, he answered. My younger brother was also there, which was surprising because he was supposed to be away at college, which I was helping pay for, but that's another story. I told my dad I was there to pick up the car. He says that was impossible because he sold it. I asked him why he did that, and he said, "You seem so annoyed about the damage. I figured you just want me to go ahead and sell it, so you didn't have to deal with it anymore." I was making payments on the car, and I asked my dad how he could have sold it without the title. He told me he just had the guy fill out a lost title form or something like that. I don't even know the details on it. I told him that I thought that was going to be a problem when the guy tries to register the car and finds out there's a lien on the car. My dad just says, "That's the buyer's problem, not mine." When I asked him how much he got for it, he told me he got $3,000. Even with the damage, it was worth closer to $7,000, but definitely no less than $5,000. So obviously, I asked my dad for the money, but he told me he'd already spent it. Then he went into a rant about how many bills he has and how he's even paying for my brother's college. Again, not true. Plus, my brother was sitting right there. He dropped out, but didn't even tell me, even though he kept cashing the checks I sent. I had very little contact with my parents after that, and I think I only actually saw them one time since then, which was around the time I got married, but not at the wedding because they refused to go. None of this was all that surprising though. I never ever should have even loaned the car to my dad's in the first place. Well, yeah, OP, to be honest, mate, it sounds to me like a couple of your family members are pretty horrible people. Your brother clearly takes after your dad. What's he doing? Seriously, like, what is he actually doing? This story actually reminds me of another Entitled Parents video I made not long ago. If you want to check that out, it's again about, you know, a Karen kind of stealing someone's car, trying to put their own name on it, their own number plate. Check it out up here if you haven't seen it yet. Very, very similar story to this. Equally as strange. What is it with, you know, parents using their children's cars and, you know, trying to get their name on the license and on the title and stuff like that? And then what, just spending the money that they made from it, selling it in the first place is mad. Then not giving the money back to the owner of the car, their child, even worse. And now moving on to our second story, slightly more serious than the first. Entitled mum and entitled grandma try to kill residents of group home. Many years ago, I worked in a group home. For the privacy of all the residents, we had a set visitation room with visitation hours by appointment only. Appointment only so that two families weren't trying to visit at the same time. It had a separate entrance and a door that shut it off from the rest of the house. It had a half bath, a TV, cable hookup, game console with maybe 50 games, a DVD player with about 150 movies, board and card games, along with nice comfy seating and a small 4-person table. Visitors were not allowed anywhere but that room if any of the other residents were home. It didn't matter if Bill wanted to show off his new bedding set or if Jack's mum wanted to see if he needed new clothes. I don't think my mum wants to do that, but anyway, if the other residents were home, no. The families of 5 of the residents were fine with it. Kyle's mother and grandmother, though, were not. They firmly believed that they were within their rights to enter the rest of the house and inspect it and his housemates. He was their baby and they had rights. By God. Well, actually no. The residents of this home were 30 to 40-year-old men with developmental and physical disabilities. They were all actually wards of the state. The fact they were even allowed to know where he was, let alone visit, was a huge privilege. To be honest, I was wondering why the rules were so strict. That makes sense. Our agency had many other homes where the families of the residents had no idea where they were and weren't allowed to see them. The families were only allowed to contact the case manager and inquire about them through him. Back to Kyle's mum and grandma. It was a constant battle to keep them out of the rest of the house. It got to the point that we had to have an extra staff member during their visits. This staff member had to sit outside the connection door while the visits were going on and physically stand, blocking their way when they would attempt to enter. I lost track of how many times we ended up calling the police to have them removed from the main part of the house before that happened. And that's when they started calling the police on us. After the third time of them calling the police to demand entrance to the rest of the house, they lost their privilege of visiting. Kyle was moved to another home where they weren't allowed to know the address. This didn't go over well, to put it nicely. They were adamant Kyle was still in our home, and they threatened us several times that we would pay for keeping their baby from them. A restraining order was granted against them, keeping them 800 feet from the house, staff, residents, and no calls to the house. It all came to a head one night when at dark 30, I was locking up the house for the night. All doors and windows had to be checked and the alarm set. Another staff was doing bedtime medicine. The other two were helping out with bedtime routines and getting laundry going. I kept telling the other staff I smelled smoke, like a campfire, just faint whiffs of it. They said I was crazy. I just walked the entire house and nothing was burning. It must be a neighbor having a small backyard fire or something, and I got a whiff while closing the windows and it was stuck in my nose. It finally became strong enough for the others to smell. In pairs, we checked the house again. Nothing, but the smell is getting stronger. We met back in the living room and decided to go ahead and call the fire department when we realized we could see wisps of smoke in the living room. We woke the residents and had them put on shoes and jackets. The smoke in the living room was now clearly visible and it was starting to make its way towards the bedroom, and it finally triggered the alarms. Protocol was to evacuate and get the residents to the van. The living room was the exact center of the house with an open floor plan, with the kitchen on one side and a laundry room on the other. The bedrooms were through the living room and to the left and right, along with two bathrooms, the visitors' room and our office being at opposite ends of each other. Down the hall, we shuffled to our office because the van was parked to that side and the keys were in the office. As we came around the corner of the house, we see the source of the smoke. Our front porch was on fire. The house was brick, which was what was preventing it from spreading outwards, but it was spreading upwards towards the roof. The police and fire departments arrived just as we reached the van. The fire department went to work on the house. The police head towards us. We're all fine, except 4 people came running up to us. Kyle's mother and grandmother, along with 2 unknown men. The 2 women started screaming for Kyle and that they were here to rescue him. We'd endangered him by allowing him to live in a fire trap. They suddenly realized that there was no Kyle in the group, and they were now screaming that we'd left him to burn in that house. They were suing us, they'd shut us down, and have us in prison for murder. The police quickly asked if we had left someone behind, to which we answered no, we have all 6 men. But for their safety, we had to get them in the van and then we'd sort this out. The police held the mother and grandmother back from us, while they continued to shriek about Kyle and the fact that we'd left him to die. 2 of the staff loaded them while me and my co-worker talked to the police, starting with the fact that those 2 women had a restraining order, and for his safety and ours, Kyle had been moved to a location unknown to them. They were cuffed immediately and told to pipe down. Now that is what I love to hear. We proceeded to explain exactly what had transpired that evening. The fire was doused quickly while we did this. One of the firemen came over to talk to the officers, and we heard him say there was preliminary evidence that this fire was set deliberately. There would be a formal investigation. Kyle's mother and grandmother were arrested for violating the restraining order and suspicion of arson. The 2 men were arrested on suspicion of arson also. Now, moving on, results of the investigation determined a clear case of arson. There was also a deliberate rigging of a device to the door leading out of the visitation room that would have been fatal to the person opening the door and if anyone was close by, debilitating, if not fatal. The 4 were indicted on vandalism, arson, 8 counts of attempted homicide, 2 counts of attempted murder. It came out that they were unaware of the other side door, which saved lives. They got a plea deal and got 7 to 10 years each. This was back in the early 2000s, so I don't remember what exactly the sentence was. Wow. Alright, look, first of all, don't get me wrong. Obviously, it's not nice having your son locked up in a place like this, but clearly he's there for his own safety. You know, like, there's a reason why he's in this place. Look, it's not ideal for the mum and the grandma, and I get that, but come on, there's obviously some backstory here. He's not just going to be in there randomly. It's not as if he's, like, trying to fight his way out, you know. Come on, there's a reason he's there. But, and I can't quite believe they did this, trying to, you know, set the whole building on fire of the place you believe your son is in, just to try and, you know, free him or let him escape or whatever, see him, even though they know he's not there. I mean, clearly they don't, but he isn't there, is mental. You're putting 8 lives at risk. You're actually trying to kill people. Sorry, not just putting their... I've just completely forgotten the fact that they set up a bomb, pretty much, didn't they? On the door that would have killed the person who opened it? What are they doing? Trying to kill some staff members, trying to free everyone else inside by setting the whole place on fire just to see your son? What? Are you sure? Wow. Lock these guys away and throw away the key. Friend's dad forced me to try his bad cooking that made me throw up over it, but he wouldn't allow me to leave the table until I finish it. Hey, so this is a bit of a long one, and the parent involved is not entirely entitled, but more like insane. First of all, a bit of background. I had a best friend, and we were really close, to the point where she would stay over mine and my parents' house for months, especially over the summer. At some point, she transferred to my school, and she would stay with us for up to 3 to 4 months straight. Go home for a day or two or on holiday with her family, and then come back to us and stay for the next few months. In the meantime, I've possibly been at her house maybe once or twice in my life. Anyway, during her stays, my mum would go as far as making separate meals for both of us, as I'm a picky eater and have some food intolerances. For example, I only eat bird meat and occasional seafood, where my friend loves red meat and pork and eats a lot but stays skinny. During her stays, we would also give her clothes, do laundry, drive her to school, and cover up any food shopping, including snacks. But her parents never reimbursed us for any of these expenses, despite being well off. They had 6+ massive houses, always had the newest cars, and had a toilet made of gold in one of the bathrooms that only her father was allowed to use. My family didn't pay much attention, since she was a friend and we had a good time. Now, this had been going on for a while, so I wasn't too worried when her parents allowed her to have one of their houses to herself and her friends for her birthday. Her dad also said that he would do all the cooking and would accommodate all the dietary requests. The day comes, and I decided against taking any extra food with me to cook, since her dad would handle the cooking. And one of our mutual friends, who was the child of our school headmaster, is openly vegetarian. So in the worst case scenario, I could eat veggies, fruits, or bread. We arrive at the house, where her dad has finished with the barbecue. Before food, he informs us that he wants my friend to have an amazing birthday. So he wants us to hand him our phones, and he will return them after the birthday, so we can have a good time as well. The only person exempt was an older friend, a 21-year-old, but that was due to him having a small child left with his fiancée and parents. After, my friend's dad puts a plate filled with meats in front of everyone, and proudly informs us that he made pork, which neither me, the headmaster's kid, or another friend could eat, for religious reasons. So I was just enjoying some fruits and veggies, when my friend's dad noticed that I hadn't eaten the barbecue that he'd made. The entitled dad then said to me, "You haven't eaten any of the meats. Are you feeling okay?" "Yeah, I'm just not really a fan of pork, and I actually prefer veggies." "Oh, are you a vegetarian as well then?" "Nah, I just don't like the taste and the texture of pork." "Well, in this case, sorry, but you're gonna have to eat it. I've spent most of the day cooking, and it's rude not to try the food that the host has made." Look, I get that, but I really don't like pork, and I'm gonna actually eat something that I do like and can tolerate. You're not making others eat pork because they had their reasons, so why pick me? "Well, their reasons are valid, while yours isn't. You're just being fuzzy. You're not leaving this table or having anything else until you eat my pork." Okay, that is potentially the maddest innuendo. Ignore that, let's carry on. "Well, I guess I won't be leaving then." Then my friend gets involved. Dad, I've told you she doesn't eat pork and prefers chicken. You said you bought some for her and my other friend. I only bought pork. She will eat what adults make and needs to stop creating a scene. Now eat. So at this point, I was pretty hungry and decided to try it, since my friend previously said that her dad's cooking is really good. I regretted my decision though with the first bite I took. Not only was it really hard and the meat felt gristly, but it didn't smell good either. As I'm very sensitive to textures, my immediate reaction would be to throw up. So I tried to escape, but the dad wouldn't let me.
You're not going anywhere until you finish your food.
But she's clearly not feeling well.
I don't care. She's not leaving the table until she finishes her food.
At this point, I had no other choice but getting sick in front of others, as this pork tasted horrific. I thought the dad would finally let me go, but no, he still expected me to finish that slice of pork that's now covered in my own vomit. Seeing all of this, our older friend texts my parents, asking to pick me up. They're trying to get hold of me, but they can't because, of course, our phones are in different rooms. About 30 minutes later, my dad does arrive, while I'm still sat at that table, covered in God knows what, with my friend's dad still insisting I must finish what I've started, and that if I don't, he'll feed me himself. This guy is a maniac. Finally, my dad comes in. What happened here? Oh my God, are you okay? Why are you crying? At this point, my friend's dad steps back and allows my dad to pick me up and help me get into the car. My dad is visibly confused at the sight of what happened, so he asks questions. So what happened here? What made her sick?
Well, she had some pork.
Well, she doesn't eat that. Why was she sitting at the table instead of being allowed to go to the bathroom?
Because she needs to stop being fussy and eat what is made for everyone, unless she is exempt. So I wanted to make sure that she eats what I'd made, and I didn't want her to ruin my golden seeds.
At this point, my dad gets visibly angry. She's nearly an adult and can cook herself, let alone take care of herself, and she knows what she likes and doesn't like. She can eat what she wants and does not need to be treated like a child.
Well, she is still a child. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so fussy. It will only cause problems, and I'm fixing a mistake that you made as a parent.
At this point, my dad gets me into the car, so I'm not exactly sure what happened next. He came back later with my phone and we drove off, but he was also still visibly angry. A few days later, my friend called me and started going off about how I'd ruined her perfect birthday, made her dad embarrassed because I'm fussy, and the meat was perfectly fine. Later, the headmaster's daughter told me that nobody actually ate the meat, as they'd all agreed it was badly made and of bad quality. My friend continued that I must have just been jealous of her life and so on. Needless to say, she was not allowed to stay anymore, and we weren't friends for much longer after that, since her dad believed I was a bad influence. I mean, listen, guys, as I said halfway through that story, that guy, as OP correctly said as well at the start, he's not entitled. I don't even think he's insane. He's almost maniac. What is he? Seriously? Yeah, I guess it's one thing asking OP to eat food that you've made. Obviously, look, you've gone through the trouble of making it completely fine. It'll be annoying. If I was to make some food and a lot of people didn't want to eat it, yeah, I'd probably be a bit annoyed and feel quite bad about myself, and I'd rather them eat it than not. Fine, but then going to the extreme of first forcing them to eat it, that's mad. Secondly, forcing them to stay at the table as they vomit, that's incredibly mad. And then thirdly, not allowing them to leave until they finish the thing that has made them vomit, despite the fact that it's now covered in that vomit. That's up there for me. Comment down below. Can you remember a story I've read where it has or it involves a person quite like this? Top tier crazy bloke, seriously. And clearly your best friend, or you know, whoever she really is, doesn't fall far from the tree. She's literally just, you know, scrounged off your entire family for months on end. Her own family seemingly not even caring about her or what she's doing, just as long as she's with you and you're paying for it all, that's all good. But as soon as it goes the other way and there's a little bit of animosity between you, your best friend, her best friend, and her dad, she's like, no, you caused all of this. Clearly not my entitled, insane, maniac dad. You caused it and your family. We're not going to be mates anymore. What a true friend she is. Now moving on to our second story of today's episode. Mum freaks at swim class. My daughter is 9 months, and we recently signed up for swim classes. At her age, it's basically getting them acclimatized to the water, so they aren't scared, and slowly getting them to the point that they can eventually float on their back. They do require masks for the parents. It's on the doors, it's in the pamphlets, and they make you watch a session before signing up, so it's not hidden. Well, we're getting ready, and this mum comes in for her kid's first lesson. He's about 15 months. She is unmasked, so the person at the front tells her she needs a mask, but that if she doesn't have any, they have extra. The mum just strolls on by, tells her she's vaccinated, and keeps it moving. The girl was in high school, and you could tell she didn't know what to do. The head person there though is a bit older and seemed like she was no nonsense, but she is awesome, so I never could confirm it till that moment. She goes up to the lady and nicely tells her that she does need a mask. It's required even if you're vaccinated. The lady doesn't like that though and says, now that is ridiculous. She didn't know and she wasn't going to do it. The manager just tells her that that's fine, she can fill out her cancellation, and since she never did a lesson, they'll refund her. But the mum goes ballistic. It was about 20 minutes of absolute craziness. Every cuss word imaginable, which really annoyed another mum who had an 11-month-old and a 3-year-old with her. Yeah, not surprised. She then got into it with that mum about cussing, and it was just a big fiasco. The Karen was yelling at the manager about being a sheep, telling the other mum to stay out of it or else. The manager was just staring, I'm sure in disbelief at just what was happening. The other mum, who was yelling at the Karen about cussing, was also using every single word variant imaginable. Flippin', mother trucker, stuff like that. That must have been a hilarious conversation. One mum just going for it, just completely swearing, not giving two dangs, and this one, using stuff like dang. Wow, great stuff. I did learn that even though my daughter is 9 months old, she thinks craziness is amusing when not involved, because she was just staring and even giggled at one point when the Karen made a sheep noise. I mean, I would too. That is hilarious. After 20 minutes of absurdity, the police show up. The high schooler had called them. It wasn't hard to figure out what was going on, but the funniest thing was the Karen turned and said, "Oh my god, thank goodness, officer, this manager is discriminating against my freedom, and that this lady thinks she can tell me what I can and can't say. Please arrest them." Okay, wow. Well, the next part was pure gold. They'd already talked to the high schooler outside the door, I guess, so they knew what was actually going on. They immediately cuffed the Karen, who just let out this unbelievable shriek. They told her she was under arrest and asked her who they could call to pick up the child, who somehow had sat in his chair the whole time, looking like he was used to this. Yeah, probably because he is used to this. She starts yelling that she isn't going to give out personal information. She knows her rights. Before the cop says anything, the other mum says, "Wow, you're dumber than I thought." Karen didn't like that and immediately lunged at her. The cop tried to stop her and I guess kinda succeeded. He didn't let her get a full head of steam. This allowed the other mum to sidestep and give her a little nudge right into the pool. At that point, I think everyone knew it was best to end things. The instructor helped the lady get out of the pool while she was yelling that she would sue and all sorts of nonsense. The cop hurriedly got her out of there and she eventually gave her their husband's number, who picked up the kid. What an absolute whirlwind that story was. I mean, if you thought getting arrested was bad, getting arrested and then having the wombo combo of being shoved into a pool by a person that you were just arguing with, wow, that is next level. Honestly, I really was not expecting it to go there. Brilliant. I thought, just plain and simple, she's being annoying, not wearing a mask, anti-masker, whatever, gets arrested. Calm, but no, being shoved in the pool to top it all off. Oh my god. She's been shoved into a pool having already been arrested. What? Oh, justice. Justice indeed. Weird woman believes sailboats are public property. I'm a 43-year-old IT guy, divorced with 2 kids, a 9-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. I'm also a member of a yacht club, and I own a smallish 34 Bavaria cruiser from 2008. Next to my kids, she's my pride and joy. Every year, I take 3 weeks vacation along with my kids, and we go cruising for the better part of those 3 weeks. We've got a small dinghy that basically serves as our pickup truck or food haul. Now, because of COVID, we couldn't go anywhere outside our home country. So we said, F it, we'll be tourists in our own country. And we went for a cruise to all the small, cozy harbours that we normally don't see. So, cruise is a go. My son knows about the lines and knows how to dock and whatnot. My daughter is the dinghy skipper during this. She loves that thing. We always have our club pennant flying as well as the Jolly Roger. The Jolly Roger means kids on board, come and play. We leave our home ports and spend a day and night at sea to get the sea legs growing and sharpen up on our boating skills. Retired Navy, I can't help it. On our third day, we arrive at a smallish marina, roughly 200 berths. In my country, calling ahead on VHF is not a thing, so the only thing to do is either go in with the boat or send in the dinghy to spot for a berth. Now, occupied berths are marked with a red sign. Available is a green sign. My kids know this, and they are also learning to spot a fitting berth. Our boat is 3.6 meters wide, and the berths are different in width. So the trick is to spot a berth wider than 3.6, but not wider than 4 meters, because that's the golden difference. Any berth wider than 4 meters costs a ton of money and is meant for bigger boats. Well, Captain Dinghy was volunteering, as always, to scout ahead, while me and the executive officer of my boat, my son, were watching from just outside the inlet. She's equipped with, of course, life jacket, radio, not VHF since that requires a certificate, and a good idea about how wide 3.6 meters really is. Our dinghy happens to be 3.5 meters long, so as long as she can fit the dinghy from end to end between the posts, the boat will fit, including the engine. Now, most people that hang around marinas are used to seeing children in dinghies and wouldn't raise an eyebrow over a 9-year-old girl in a small dinghy wearing a life jacket and looking for empty berths. However, not all people are like that, which we would soon find out. She found one and radioed that back, saying, "I've got one, Daddy. It's the Jeep here, and I'm waiting for you here. Over." I reply with, "Good job. En route now. Daddy out." The owners of the boats on either side are the caring, nice older couples, and especially the portside neighbours are completely stunned by Captain Dinghy and her professionalism. They're small talking when we arrive to the berth and help mooring, for which I pay with a cold beer and a soda for the kids. Happy days all around. On the opposite side of the pier, a couple of boats are also flying the Jolly Roger, so the kids are off after a quick lunch. The berth directly opposite us is also available, but knowing from experience, that will soon change. And how right I was. Later in the afternoon, we saw the arrival of HMS Karen and her sailing circus. They arrived while the nice grandparents next door and I were discussing nice marinas to visit, and as a matter of course, we stood by to help receive lines and help with mooring. To simplify their docking, well, it was a trash show. They had a trimaran, a boat with 3 hulls. The outer 2 can retract when you dock and extend when you sail. They knew nothing about the boat, so it was clearly a rental boat. After 5 or 6 attempts of docking with one side retracted, the other side retracted, then no side retracted, full power plus screaming came all around. The harbour master even came down to join us. So now we stand 8 guys plus 1 harbour master, and we're just looking like, what the F are you guys doing? Even my 7-year-old son comes by with some new friends and they say, "Are they for real?" Grandma to our port side quickly provided some ice and soda for the kids. She was amazing. We managed to convince them, the wrecking crew, to throw us the forward lines, and we could pull them in after they retracted both pontoons. Now this took the better part of 1.5 hours. When they finally docked, they acted like they invented boating. I know that docking in a foreign port can be quite difficult, but when you need 8 people to help you, well, one might keep a low profile, you'd think. But not that couple though. They were totally clueless about how to get shore power, water, and how to register with the harbour master, who, by the way, happened to stand right in front of them when they docked. So, the harbour master is now trying to guide them in how to register, what to do regarding that shore power and water. And boy, did they listen. Well, no, they didn't. HMS Karen started to full yell instead about how they paid a lot of money to rent that boat and how they expected harbour fees to be included in the rent, and then threatened to report the harbour master to the rental company they used and somehow get him fired for trying to extort money from them. After her endless monologue, there were about 8 to 10 guys laughing. The harbour master just looked at them and went, "Okay, these are the rules. Each marina requires a fee for docking. That fee covers power, water, and the space you occupy. It includes access to bathrooms, cooking facilities, and cleaning. Your rental company does not own any marina. Is that clear?" The circus husband understood, but failed to convey the last part to HMS Karen, something we found out later the next morning. Next morning, we prepare to go underway. Kids are saying goodbye to their new friends. My son is pampered with cookies from Grandma Port and Starboard. Broken hearts from the young girls in the marina. He's got blonde hair with curls and green eyes, a true heartbreaker. And Captain Dinghy is getting ready to go underway. She's dressed in the uniform for the part. Unicorn PJ pants, swimwear, and a life jacket. Now here is where the title, which I'll remind you guys is Weird Women Believe Sailboats Are Public Property, comes into play. We're finishing our stay, meaning pulling our shore power cable, testing our lights and systems, testing our bow thruster and prop, VHF and dinghy. But while I'm standing at the stern, ready to single up the lines so my curly-haired executive officer will have an easy job, HMS Karen comes running up to me. "What are you doing?" "Good morning. Yeah, we're gonna get underway now. We're going to an island recommended by our Grandma Ports. Enjoy your stay here." "What? Well, you can't leave?" You're pretty sure I can? Sorry, why wouldn't I?" "Because we want that boat." "What? You want my boat?" "Lady, my boat's not for sale, so excuse me, we have to go." "What? No, all boats are property of the rental company, and we called them yesterday and chartered that boat. Now hand it over or else." "Lady, you're nuts." I then say to my son, "Clear forward lines," and to my daughter, "Meet up outside the marina, docking starboard side." Now we are not attached to the marina anymore, and my son is rolling up the bowlines when HMS tries to grab the push bit to keep us in the marina. Well, she lost that battle. "All stop," I say. "Man overboard." She came up yelling and screaming. Starboard Grandad guided her on board their boat and asked her what the heck she thought she was doing, while Port Grandad called the harbour master. "Is she okay?" "Yes, we got her. Enjoy your trip, and we'll see you at the new port." We leave and head for that port. And oh boy, did I hope that she was a one-time Karen. But guys, as I said in the intro, unfortunately, that post right there is just the beginning of the story. Look, the scene has now been set. There's a Karen on the high seas, right? That's all we know. She's already, completely mental. That's clear to see. But amazingly, this story does not stop right here. Let's move right into part 2. So then, moving on to the second part of that story. Weird Women Believe Sailboats Are Public Property, part 2. When we left the marina and recovered Captain Dinghy and the dinghy itself, we set sail for the island suggested by Grandma Port. The sail itself was pretty uneventful. The executive officer of the ship, my 7-year-old son, caught a fish, a nice 2-kilogram cod. Wow, that was dinner. That is not uneventful. That's a great catch, mate. Next morning, we had an equally uneventful docking next to a nice young couple that were on their first cruise in her parents' boat. A nice 30-feet boat, beautifully maintained. Now, because the marina had floating docks, we reversed in and lowered the stern. After the usual post-docking exercise, fenders, lines, power, and check-in, we greeted the young couple next to us and checked out the marina. The Jolly Roger was still flying, so there were a couple of young pirates, kids, awaiting to see who the new recruits to the playground were. After a quick lunch, the kids again were off. I was about to shut down the stationary VHF when I heard a call from the Coast Guard advising all marinas to keep a lookout for a stolen boat in the area, with a description vaguely matching my boat, as well as a couple of hundred others. Now that is not something that happens every day, but I know that a few human beings get confused about the mine and not mine concept, so I took a note of it and turned off the VHF. At around 4 o'clock, I recognized a boat coming in, and was pleased to see Grandma Port from the first post, standing at the stern looking for a spot. I hailed them and saw a spot opposite ours, but with a red tag. A quick call to the local harbour master later. It was owned by a local, but was available for 2 weeks. They just forgot to turn the plates. 15 minutes later, and both of them were sitting in the cockpit of my boat, having a drink with our new friends from next door. I've got to say, guys, boating like this, just, meeting new people, chilling, having a great time, inviting them onto the boat, sending your kids off to other boats, sounds amazing. It sounds like a whale of a time. Anyway, during this drink, we get to hear Grandma Port's story. So, after we left, and they got HMS Karen onto the dry land, she was raging, the Karen that is, that we had tried to kill her, that we'd stolen our own boat, and that she would throw them into a prison cell and throw away the key. Grandma Port just giggled and told her to calm down, that she did that to herself, and what was she thinking grabbing a boat that was pulling out? Grandpa Port told her to get on their boat, change into something dry, and enjoy herself, instead of making a fool of herself in front of her circus husband and their child. Now, I'd never seen that child, but apparently they had a toddler with them, but not a life jacket or vest in sight. As one does, I checked in on the Book of Faces, and about 5 minutes later, I got a text from a guy I used to work with back in the Navy, asking me if I could supply a cold beer in about 10 minutes when he got off shift. One short trip to the mast and flags, Bravo, Echo, first up, Romeo was flying, my friend arrived, in uniform, and asked where the heck his beer was at. We've known each other for the better part of 20 years. So he expected to get the "where the heck have you been, shipmate" back. After the hugging and the "how the heck are you" talk, I introduced him to my new friends and the grandparents. He definitely had Grandma Port on his good side because of the uniform. Even Grandpa Port started telling stories from back then in the Navy. I never told them that I did other than IT, so they didn't know much about my naval background, and they were actually quite amused when my friend told them that I was his old petty officer. After the second round of flags, I asked about the call earlier from the Coast Guard. He's the chief petty officer at the nearby coastal watch station, and the way our Coast Guard and Navy works is that the Navy is in charge of the sea, but the Coast Guard enforces inside coastal waters. And oh boy, he got a call from the local police reporting the theft and possible hijacking of a sailboat from the last port that we were at, as reported from an enraged woman with a description of a boat similar to ours, and that the harbour master knew about it. Grandpa Port just about let out half his drink through his nose when he heard that, and started to raise his voice at my friend, in my defence, and told him what actually happened. That HMS Karen was nuts, that she tried to grab my boat after we pulled out of the slip, and that she was a complete waste of air. Thanks, Grandpa. My friend said to me, "That was you? I don't know. Oh my god, that was you. So now what?" No worries, I'll call her off and talk to my captain in the morning. Great. I then notice a police officer walking towards our boat. Yeah, can you do it now? Now, have any of you ever heard the phrase, "the Navy is a small place"? Well, it turned out that my friend was the officer's instructor at boot camp, as I was his. So the officer said, "Sorry, Chief, are the Navy handling this?" "Oh, hi, mate. Yeah, how are you? Care to explain?" Well, we had a report of a theft of a boat, and the harbour master told us that a boat fitting this description pulled in this morning. Well, let's check this out then, shall we? OP, you have your certificates and proof of insurance and ownership with you, right? Yeah, I do, sure. I hand the officer my binder with certificates. Well, nothing to worry about here, but have you by chance seen the boat in question? Before I can say anything, Grandpa Port interjects. "Officer, if that report came from a wet, loud, and wide woman, I have a story to tell you." Of course, he then explains the story from the previous post. Okay, Chief, are you backing this up? As sure as you wouldn't like another go at the pits at boot camp. Yeah, right, Chief. Sorry to bother you guys, but you know how it is. He left after that, and things turned back to normal. The kids got home, dinner, bedtime, sundowner with the neighbours, who now had a lot to talk about. But guys, as I said, that is going to do it for this one. If you do want to see how this story ends with part 3 and part 4, please do check out tomorrow's episode on my channel. Same place, same time. Don't worry about that. If you're very scared about missing it, well, turn on notifications somewhere. Down there, maybe. Click the subscribe button and turn notifications on so you'll be notified about part 2 of this video tomorrow when it gets released. I have to say though, so far, this story is warming up so nicely. Already so much has happened. This This Karen is accusing an owner of a boat of stealing that boat. And clearly, we've seen how inept she is on the water and that her entire family have no idea what they're doing by the fact that, she was chucked in the water. I mean, seriously, did she actually think she could push a moving boat back and not get, pushed the other way? Idiotic behavior. Like, imagine that was a car and you were trying to push a car the other way that it was driving. What would happen then? Same sort of a situation here, Karen, apart from this one's on water. Weird woman believes sailboats are public property, part 3. As mentioned in part 1, my boat is a Bavaria 34 cruiser. It used to belong to my grandparents, but when my grandma had her stroke back in 2012, my granddad stopped sailing. They passed in 2013, 3 weeks after each other. Now, granddad wasn't ill or anything, he just gave up after grandma passed, after her third and last stroke. Before they passed, they willed the boat to me, because my parents already have a boat, and they knew that I love sailing in her. So it's not that I'm a rich, spoiled brat who just got a boat, but there's many emotions involved when sailing her. I grew up spending summers on their old boats, learning from both granddad and my dad as how to sail, which eventually led me to my naval career, ending in my retirement from the Navy when I turned 35 and my contract expired. The point being that I always need to convince myself if grandma would approve if I tried to change something or upgrade. In my mind, it's still their boat in many ways. This year, I spoiled the boat and myself rotten by buying a new chart plotter that integrates all sensors, depth sounder, Windex, autopilot, and AIS. AIS is a system that shows information on other boats as well as your own, similar to what airplanes use. As we already planned to stay for at least 4 days, I thought that this would be the perfect time to upgrade my existing chart plotter for the new one. And as luck still was present, Grandpa Port was an electrician before he retired. So, off to the supermarket I went for the purchase of liquid bunnies to pay said electrician that I just hauled out of retirement for 1 day. Now, the marina we're staying in is rather large, meaning that I either have a long walk followed by a heavy walk back, or I'll have Captain Dinghy give me a lift to the old port and join me for my shopping needs. The supermarket is basically 100 meters from the old port, so off we went. Her at the helm, I'm in the front acting as a ballast. XO, my son, the executive officer of our ship, was with friends and knew his way around. Also, he knew he had an abundant supply of ice cream available. Thanks again, Grandma Port. We arrive at the supermarket and all is well. Then my daughter just lets out a freak. It's HMS Karen, yelling at her poor circus husband because apparently the item she wanted is sold out. Now look, I'm not a fan of my children swearing, but this time I think she had a point, so I let it slide. We ducked the heck out of there and went to the checkout, where we found a small gift basket style flower arrangement with a bottle of wine and some chocolate for Grandma Port. We also picked up some cash and a small refill for the pantry. When we'd bagged everything, we left for the dinghy. If only we had run the red light at the crosswalk outside the supermarkets. HMS Karen spotted us. Hey, you! I kept walking and said to Captain Dinghy, not happening. Now you get in the dinghy, get your life jacket on, and throw me the rope we used to get goods aboard. Dad, she's nuts. All right, I'll hook your life jacket up as well when I throw the rope. Hey, I'm talking to you. You're the guy who stole our boat. Don't even think about moving. I'm not letting you get away. I acknowledged the lady. Lady, the mental hospital is not that far from here. I don't know, but it just seemed like the right thing to say. I'm sure someone there would be able to help you. I'm putting on my life jacket and lowering the goods into the dinghy. All I need to do is get onto it via the ladder that we tied up to. That's when I suddenly found myself floating in midair right next to the dinghy. She pushed me. The maniac pushed me off the frickin' dock. Our life vests are the manual type for adults, which means that I have to pull a cord for it to inflate. But the kid vests are the automatic kind that inflate if they get wet. A small chalk tablet that dissolves in water makes sure that they inflate. Very clever. But it still means that I have to unwrap it, test it for 24 hours, and then repack it. And also that means that I'm one life vest short for 24 hours, and I have to replace the CO2 cartridge because it's been in the water. That's no biggie, to be fair, it's only about $6. And I've got a small supply on board the boat. But it's the principle. 2 steps up the ladder and I'm on board the dinghy. Captain Dinghy was amazing. She started the engine and used it to push the boat into the ladder, so I'm on board in no time. What are you doing? Don't even try to escape. And you, little girl, don't even think about trying to touch anything. That's nice, says my daughter, and she reverses out and floors it out the old dog. On our way back to the marina, my daughter just shook her head and said, "What a female dog." Again, she's got a point, so I let it slide. Back in the marina, we tie our boat up and I got a change of clothes. The only casualty was my work phone, so I've got to go back into town to get a new one. Luckily, that's a work expense, but it's a bit annoying reconfiguring everything, including credit cards and such. And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to finish this in part 4. Okay, what the heck? This is actually now getting really weird. Like, what a coincidence. Not only am I on a boat right now at the same time that you're listening and watching this video, but secondly, my phone also got wet and I had to like delete it and restore it and pretty much get a new one like the other day. What's going on here? Am I OP? That's my question. But anyway, guys, that is the end of part 3. Part 4 still to come. Somehow, this Karen is still involved in the story. I guess maybe the OP and their family are just like choosing a pretty normal tourist route, and Karen and her family are kind of going along the same route, just maybe a day or two behind. But the fact that you are just continuing to bump into this Karen is very, very funny. Actually kind of reminds me of when I was a young kid on holiday and I was in Sri Lanka with my family, and we kept bumping in and going to the same hotel as the Sri Lankan cricket team for some reason. So it looked as if we were just following them. Bit of a weird story, but yeah, that's what came to my head. Anyway, part 4. So then, now getting into the final part of this incredible story. Weird woman believes sailboats are public property. Last part. I'm almost sad because, you know, it's been such an adventure, but hey, everything good, I guess, has to come to an end at some point. Here we go. When Captain Dinghy and I returned from the store and got on board, Grandpa Ports was trying to teach my son, XO, how to splice a 3-strand rope, and remarking the fact that I was soaking wet and the captain was bone dry, that had we used a lifeline like that in the dinghy, I wouldn't have fallen off. Thanks, Grandpa Ports. Well, as I went below for a change of clothes, my faithful companion told the grandparents what had happened. Grandma Port hugged Captain Dinghy and asked if she was okay, which was enough to make XO roll with laughter. The grandparents offered to invite us over to their boat for dinner, which we happily accepted. Now, their boat is a bit smaller than ours, but their salon below deck is somehow bigger. Go figure. Seeing as this had been an eventful day, the kids were given free roam to the playground, probably to plot the overthrow of the free world by pirates with the other kids, provided that Captain Dinghy brought the small radio we normally use for docking, so we could call them back when dinner was ready. Grandpa brought out a generous glass of his favourite rum, while he and I discussed terms and conditions regarding the chart plotter replacements and the price in liquid money, and also what the heck happened during today. Grandma Port interjected during her hard work in the galley, supervising us preparing potatoes and cleaning the fish that would be our dinner, that I should call that nice young gentleman that came to visit us on our first day, and maybe ask him if he could help. Grandpa was giggling when I asked if it was a dinner invitation, and if so, was the dress code uniform or casual? Grandma's rolling eyes and the following, "Oh God, men," was enough to make all 3 of us share a laugh. A quick call to my friend from before, and we were 6 persons having dinner in the nicest environment one could have. Grandma, that salmon was cooked to perfection. My friend then invited Grandpa and me out to a small place that served liquid monies in tall glasses, provided we didn't stay out late. My friend's fiance was getting along perfectly with Grandma and the kids, so off we went. We arrived to a small house of fluent currency and found a table. Why not just say, you know, bar, alcohol, I don't know. Anyway, my friend bought the first round and Grandpa told the story about my impromptu flying lesson in the port, at which my friend had this odd look on his face. He excused himself for a minute and brought over a familiar face. Apparently, he spotted his private police friend while ordering and wanted to hear what the options were regarding HMS Karen. Well, as he told the story, the police got a call regarding theft of a boat, assault, and underage sailing of a dinghy. He and his partner was assigned to the call and they responded. When they arrived, they were met by an enraged woman claiming that she'd been assaulted, had her sailboat stolen, and that the perpetrator was aided by an underage girl. When they asked her to elaborate, she started yelling at them,
I already told you. Now do your job and arrest them.
Now, as she was testing the hearing of people the next town over, a couple of fishermen who had docked further down the pier approached the partner and asked if this was about the assault on the guy who she threw off the pier. This got the attention of both the partner and him. They asked her about the incident and she replied with, "Yes, that's what I've been trying to tell you. We found out that our first boat was too difficult to dock and then we rented a new one. But the previous renter wouldn't give us our boat. Instead, he insulted me, stole our boat, and had an underage child drive him." Mom, as I recall, you claimed someone hijacked your boat. We even had the Navy looking out for them. Did you return your rental to the original place? And did it happen there? But what difference does it make? We rented a boat bigger and better. They had one. We paid more. All boats are owned by the rental company anyway. We had the right to get our boats. Sorry, this woman thinks that every single boat is owned by the same rental company that they used to rent their boat in the first place. Sorry. Absolutely ludicrous. Mom, as I just heard from these people here, you just assaulted a person, not to include risking his life. Now, I need to see some ID, because if we get a report about this from the victim, you're gonna face the charges. Understand? Don't talk back to me unless you have our boat. I'm not accepting your excuses. Get me my boat. And so, HMS Karen got a free ride in a smaller, land-ridden boat, but with pretty lights on top. Our new police friend ended his story by saying she was an absolute dog, finishing his pints. Well, no need to say it. Anyway, I got up, went to the bar, and opened up a $100 tab for our new friend in law enforcement. We left right after the "no, I can't accept that" and whatnot, but my friend was firm. When we got back to the marina, the kids were sleeping on board our newfound grandparents' boat, and Grandma and my friend's fiance were laughing like teenage girls. Next morning, the kids said their goodbyes to their new grandparents, exchanged addresses, and we left the marina. We hope to see those ports again next year, but if not, we'll come visit them. I don't know how to end this incredible story better than stay safe, listen to reason, and just because you're a Karen, don't push people into water. And there we go, guys. That is the end of this incredible four-part for OP, two-part video series for me entitled Parent Story. What an amazing adventure. I just want to say a big thank you to OP. Their username is in the description down below for this incredible story. Brilliant stuff. I mean, brilliant stuff. Again, as I mentioned earlier on in the video, right now, at the time you're watching this video, if you watch it on the date it was released, I'll be on a boat quite similar to this at the same time, which is why I wanted to read the story and why it's, a little bit convenient that I'd read this story at this time. And if I've taken a video or something or a picture, I'll chuck it in right now. And I also may have put one in earlier in the video as well. If you want to see more on that, go and check out my Instagram, which is linked down below in the description. I'll be posting stuff there on my story of my trip on a lovely boat. Positive revenge. So, I'm a terrible person by trade. I'm a dealership sales manager, and I'm gonna make this brief. Guys, anyone who starts any story saying that they're a terrible person, well, that's a plus for me. Some good self-deprecation banter, I'm all here for it. Anyway, I managed a digital sales team for a year or so, and I got really close to that team, trained them, grew the team into the #1 in our group, and the #2 for our manufacturer in the region. That's out of 400 plus dealers. Unfortunately, I was let go by my general manager, who runs the dealership, during the start of COVID, over the objections of our group and corporates, because my position cost a ton of money in commission. Yep, I kinda wrecked my pay plan. So, fast forward a bit. My old team keeps in touch and asks for assistance every now and then, and I'm always happy to help. I genuinely like these people because I care about their professional development. As of yet, nobody has been put in place to replace my old position, but the team is still doing really well. I hired great people and put a lot of effort into training myself out of a job. Now, I have a higher title, more responsibility, and run the entire sales side of a different dealership. So, I get a call from my old team telling me the management upped their pay to compensate for lower volume, but then retracted it after a month. They want to quit and work elsewhere as a result. Now, my current dealer doesn't run a department like theirs, so I have no real need for them, but I still call people I know, and apparently my reputation is better known and more highly regarded than I expected. As a result of those calls, I get interviews for my old team lined up. They're all getting new positions, get to keep working together, and they all get quite large pay bumps. The delicious part? Well, tomorrow, the GM who let me go is going to receive, effective immediately, resignations from his entire digital sales department. Again, this department was the number one in a group of 15 dealerships. This department accounted for 60 to 70% of the store's sales volume in any given month. Without these trained and capable staff, they're going right back to where they started as far as closing percentage. Now, based on their current numbers, the GM who fired me is looking at losing 30 to 40% of the store's sales volume. He's actually in danger of turning a loss due to all the investment in digital marketing and sales, which won't see anywhere near the ROI to justify it. Mind you, this is a sizable, franchised car dealership. We're talking millions per month when it's all running well. He'll never know that I found the team new jobs. He'll never know that I called in favors, made introductions, and sold the heck out of these people to their new employers. Now, I didn't do this for the revenge. I did it because I care about my old team and their development. They're amazing at what they do, and they deserve to be paid highly for it, in a lower stress environment than where they were. I got the best revenge I can imagine. And all I had to do was be a decent person and keep cheerleading the team I once helped build and train. And also guys, OP has given us a little update as well. I just got a call from a guy I know who does finance and insurance product stuff, though not for my old employer. "What did you do, bro?" he said. Well, I played coy a bit, asking if anyone there knew it was me. "You know, I used to be GSM up there. I keep in touch, and people are losing their minds. All I heard is the GM's on the warpath. So another employee called me telling me he might need a hookup for a new job. I put two and two together once I heard and called you. So what did you do?" That is the only fallout I've heard so far. And there we go, guys. A quick little positive revenge story for once to start off today's video. I wanted to read the story, and I wanted to read it first in today's episode to just prove to you, as you probably already know to be fair, that not all revenge stories have to be malicious. They're not all about going after someone who's wronged you and trying to put them into the ground and just destroy their life like they destroyed yours. Nah, in this one, OP was just being a good bloke. And as a result, he got some cool revenge, you know, kind of on the side. To be fair to OP, like, what a character. To, you know, leave that job, get fired from that job, probably feel horrible about it, but still be in contact with your old team, still, you know, really help them out and ultimately get them better jobs, improving their lives and getting them out of that horrible workplace into a great one. You're an absolute legend. So selfless. Legendary. Alright then, now moving on to our second quickfire revenge tale. I cancelled countless interviews at my old job after they let me go early. I spent just over 5 years working a retail job. I eventually worked my way up and was the hiring scheduling manager at my job. In February of this year, I got a new job that would be starting mid-March. There was about a 6-week gap between when I got my job and when I would be starting. Because I hated it when my co-workers would do it, I didn't want to quit on the spot. So I put in a 6-week notice and let my boss and the owner know that I would train whoever they wanted me to train and help with a smooth transition. Whenever there's a change of management at all, things tend to get rocky for a little bit. My bosses told me that it would be great if I did that, but then immediately locked me out of the system and told me I'd no longer be needed, basically firing me. Of course, I claimed unemployment during this time. What was unfortunate though, is that my email and personal calendar was synced up to the hiring software my old company used. And because I was locked out, I couldn't remove it. I tried blocking everything, but it's an automated software, so it automatically added calendar events and sent me updates on the hiring process of various new people to my email. I contacted my old bosses and I did ask for them to remove me, but they told me tough, essentially, and that was that. Or so I thought. After a few months, I realized that my old job was sending me extremely personal information about new recruits. Social security numbers, phone numbers, emails, more. So I contacted the state and let them know so they could complete an investigation. At this moment, it's still ongoing. But in the meantime, because it had been sending their information to my email, I could see their resumes. For the last 4 months, any candidate who I think might be a good fit, I got in contact with them and explained the situation, letting them know just how annoying of a place my old job is to work. Usually, they thank me. A few have been mad that I have their contact information, rightfully so, I'd be angry too, and most just cancel their interview appointments. Word must have made its way up to my old bosses, because while I was on my lunch break at my new job, my old boss called me to ask if I've been contacting potential new hires to spread rumours about my old job. I admitted to it, and he said, "After all these years, and after how well we've treated you, this is how you repay us?" I told him to eat poop and I hung up. Shortly after, I got an email finally unsubscribing me from the hiring portal. Victory. Again, quite similar to the first story, you're kind of just doing the right thing here. Look, yeah, maybe it's not your place to be cancelling future interviewers, but come on. It would have taken literally one click of a button to unsubscribe an old ex-worker from their current mailing list. It was just negligence and ultimately laziness. And they were like, you know what, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to do something that would spend 5 seconds and not leak loads of really personal and private information to someone that shouldn't have it. Yeah, what a good business to work for. Great people. And now moving on to our final story, more of a traditional revenge story, if you like. Entitled Dad sits next to a water slide and expects to not get wet. So, I'm sliding down a water slide. It's about 10 meters high, 20 meters from the beginning to the end of the slide, so you can't just be slow on it. I mean, you can, but not so slow that you don't splash the person that's sitting like 2 meters away from the end of the slide. This dude also wasn't an employee, he was in swim shorts. He came in after us and left before us. Alright, so I slide down lying on my back, going pretty fast. As I landed and swam up, I just see an angry man standing up, rushing towards me, like so fast I wonder how he didn't fall into the pool.
"Hey, stop making me and my family wet."
He and his daughter, but his daughter was rather embarrassed than annoyed. Alright then, go further away from the slide. Don't expect me to make up for it, I replied.
"Like I would care for your wants. Stop annoying me and my family. Otherwise, you can't slide anymore."
And who says that?
"The rules of the park. It says that you can't slide fast."
And where's that written?
"There."
He points at the stairs of the slide.
"Now stop annoying my family."
So I just go over there to that sign and read the rules. It said that kids up to 10 years are supposed to not be fast and under the supervision of their parents. I then just go up the slide and commit the worst crime ever. Slide down even faster, and with 2 more people. They asked me what that was about, and I just told them. Before we slid, one of my boys explained to me a trick, how to make a big bomb while sliding. Not just a bomb, a big one. Like so big that the entitled dad would be covered in water, in his words. Now yes, I would feel bad for the daughter, but she actually sat away. I think she already knew that we couldn't just stop our crimes at this point. And this boy, well, he didn't lie. We all slid down together, down this massive slide, probably the biggest one there, and the entitled dad got absolutely covered in water. Like before this, he looked like he wasn't even in the water, and now he looked like he'd been out 5 minutes prior. Of course, I wasted my time, and my ears, by listening to his rubbish.
"Stop ganging up on my family. You know you could all go to jail now."
Now, which crime did we apparently commit, I hear you ask? Well, a hate crime. After we slid some more times, and him continuing to look annoyed, like the when you rage in games but don't say anything because you're annoyed type of angry, he ended up just moving away. Yeah, and by the way, I've been there way too many times, that's for sure. Now guys, unfortunately, I'm currently in jail for my hate crimes I committed against this family, for God's sake. Now, amazingly guys, I'm not quite sure why OP has done this, but he said at the end there, if you want, I can make a quick drawing to show the layout of the pool, and he actually has. Now, it's got NSFW by it because the drawing is terrible. But anyway, have a look at this. Actually, sorry, before I show you this, guys, it's blurred right now. Just be warned, if you are good at drawing or you're an artist yourself, this might burn your eyes, okay? I've warned you. Look at this. I mean, the levels of you know, talent, technique, precision, just, you know, absolute natural ability. are astonishing. I can barely even comprehend what I'm seeing. But anyway, this is probably the most unnecessary drawing ever. Just a slide, me, splash, and the man. Yeah, that's kind of what I expected. Unnecessary, but I absolutely love it. Thanks, OP. Entitled Mum calls the police on me because of my cancer. For some backstory, I live in a small, rather dodgy town near the coast of England, which naturally comes with an unusual amount of entitled chavs and 16-year-old entitled mums. This incident occurred a little over 2 years ago. I hadn't yet been diagnosed at this point, but I was just 1 week later. I'm also noticeably autistic, and anyone who actually pays attention to an interaction with me can easily tell that something is off. Thankfully, I'm high functioning, which means I'm able to function relatively normally in society, but I still have a lot of difficulty being completely oblivious to social cues and such, as well as some few tics here and there. Anyway, on to the story. I was with my mates, we'll call them James and Harry, and it was a relatively sunny day by British standards, so we decided to go into town. All three of us had taken our skateboards with us, thinking we could go down to the beach in the evening and skate along the old concrete docks when it had cleared out for the day. In the meantime, we decided to go get a coffee and then head out to the skate park. Enter the entitled mum of this story and her children. Now, when we arrived at the skate park, we all immediately noticed 3 little crotch goblins. The oldest looked around 6 at most, running around, climbing up the ramps, etc. Now, I am by no means a professional at skating, nor are my friends, but I knew that having 3 little kids running around while we skated was not safe. We were mostly concerned for their safety rather than ours, as we could take a tumble. How else do you learn to skate? But the kids could really get hurt. So I decided to go and ask the eldest kindly where their mum was, and if they could move to the children's park, which was empty and right next to the skate park. Just to interject quickly, guys, I've never been massively into skateboarding myself, but I've been watching it at the Olympics the last week or so. It's been amazing. It's so good. If you haven't seen the Olympic skateboarding, go and watch it. Get the highlights. It's unreal. Now, I hadn't even finished the first word to this kid when all of a sudden I heard a screech from behind me. I turn around to see what's happening, and that's when I see her. Typical chav mum. Badly dyed dark red hair, cheap earrings, hoops so big a gymnast could use them, dressed in a dirty pink onesie. That's what we call single-piece jumpsuit, like pajamas in England. A cigarette in one hand and a cheap Stella beer in the other, furiously walking towards the park. She's looking straight at me as she gets closer to the park, and I decide to ask the kid if that was his mother. Big mistake. As I turn back to face the kid, she suddenly yells, "Get the F away from my kids, you freaking nonce!" Wow, for those of you that don't know, if you're American, nonce is pretty much someone who likes kids, to, put it plainly. At this point, I realize I'm in it for the long run. My friends tried to calm her down and explain, and I was simply asking the kid if he could move to the dedicated kids park, which I repeat, was right next to the skate park. She calms down a bit, but not much. She's still very irate, saying we've got no right to talk to kids at our age. We were barely 16 at the time. We again explain that I was simply asking to know where his mother was, and I would have gladly come to her first if we knew whose kids they were at that point. Now, she's calmed down a little bit, but she's still shooting glares that feel like daggers, and she insinuates, once again, that I am a kid lover. Very strange. I'm annoyed, but to be honest, I'm kind of used to these types of interactions in this town. She gathers up her little hexspawns to, quote, make sure they're safe, again shooting me daggers, and tells us her kids have the right to play here. Now, we answered that yes, of course, technically they do, but having them around could be potentially dangerous, as we could hit them by accident while skating. Well then, why don't you just skate somewhere else? My mate James said, well, this is the only skate park in town, and the council built it specifically to stop people skating elsewhere and potentially injuring others. I continue. Listen, we just want to make sure your children are safe. There's a park with swings and proper slides instead of having them go down ramps. It's right there. I point next to the skate park. This is the only place that we have to practice safely. And to be honest, I'd even be fine with the kids staying here as long as you keep an eye on them and they don't get in our way. Fine, she says, while I kid you not, blowing cigarette smoke directly into her youngest face. The day goes on without much more happening, just the kids getting in the way occasionally and then crying about not being allowed to use our skateboards, which the mum did make a small fuss about, but it wasn't that bad. Until I sit down at the bench, exhausted from the skating and feeling a migraine coming on, as well as being pretty dizzy. Now, although by this point I hadn't been diagnosed, my doctor previously believed I had high blood pressure that caused these chronic migraines. As a result, I've been given medication that I carried in a small pill box, as I had to take them regularly, as well as some ibuprofen, which I was told to take as soon as I felt a migraine brewing. I'd also started the habit of keeping a few mints in the other compartments of my pill box to wash out the disgusting taste of the pills. James and Harry both came to sit with me, as they knew that I had not been very well recently, having passed out a few times in school and constantly being plagued with vertigo and migraines. I pulled out my pill box, took my meds with a big gulp of water, and then took a mint, which I offered to both my friends. Then, as each of them took one, that was when we heard it.
Oh my god, how dare you take drugs in front of my kids?
At this point, knowing I'm exhausted, Harry takes the lead. This is just his meds. He's got chronic migraine.
That is bull. You chat more poop than my nan's bar. I freaking saw all three of you take them. You're all so freaking disgusting doing drugs in a kid's park in front of my freaking kids.
Bear in mind, she is spewing all those swear words that I can't say because YouTube will hate me right in front of her oh so delicate children.
At this point, Harry has had enough as all of the previous small pestering has built up and he was done being polite.
He actually just burst out laughing.
Bruv, those were sweets, you mental idiot. Now please, leave us alone. We were kind enough to not purposefully slam into your kids, even though you didn't keep an eye on them like you said you would. They did the exact opposite of staying out of the way.
Then the entitled mum replied,
"How dare you talk to me like this, you..."
Wow, that is actually going to have to be censored. Mad word. She then pulled out her phone and said,
"I'm calling the police."
All with a huge grin on her face. Meanwhile, my migraine had taken a turn for the worst, yet I'm not really surprised with all that shouting. I hear her in the background yelling loudly like she was in mortal danger about some kids doing drugs to a poor 999 dispatcher. At this point, I start puking. Like, seriously puking. The vertigo had kicked in and my migraine was at full strength. As I heard her screech,
"One of them is ODing right in front of me and my kids. You need to send an officer over here right now."
Harry and James quickly come to my help. Harry trying to keep me from falling over as I'm dry retching to the point it's making my throat bleed, while James goes to get my water bottle. The entitled mum, upon seeing me unfortunately puke up some blood, looks at me and says,
"Oh, that's disgusting."
At this point, Harry was trying to get her to calm down and actually help, as I was in a much worse state than he'd ever seen me, asking if she had napkins. She looks at him with the same daggers she'd shown me at the beginning of the day and says,
"No. Besides, that's what he deserves for taking drugs in a kid's park. He can die for all I care."
Thankfully, this not being the biggest of towns, the police station was just around the corner of the park. And the officers, yes, 5 officers in total, drugs and violence are quite common around here, so they'd taken the call very seriously, had arrived just in time to hear that last interaction. Although they didn't understand the full situation yet, they were still baffled by her words. I passed out right then and there as I saw them approaching me. I came back to relatively quickly, I'd say about 20 to 30 seconds later, and the entitled mum was droning on and on about how I'd clearly taken drugs and was having an overdose or something. Harry and a policeman were now standing over me, while James explained to another the full story. Harry handed me my water bottle along with my pill box, which the policeman took to inspect. In one compartment was the ibuprofen, clearly identifiable by the bright pink sugar coating on it. In the UK, at least, we have that. I don't know about elsewhere. And in the other, Tic Tacs. Yes, those drugs we supposedly took were none other than Tic Tacs. The officer just looked confused as anything and handed me an ibuprofen, watching me down a full litre of water before checking me over for any injuries and asking if I was feeling okay, to which I nodded and slowly got up. By that time, James had explained everything to the 4 other officers, and they were understanding and patient, considering behind them was an irate woman telling them that he was a freaking liar and that we were so obviously high. In the end, the 5th officer showed the pill box to the 4 others, who had found nothing while searching my bag. They all looked at the Tic Tac compartment dumbfounded. I heard James say that they are clearly Tic Tacs, and one of the officers just took one out, put it in his mouth to test it, and just smirked. They then walked back my way and handed me the pillbox. The officer then pointed out that I didn't look well at all and was very pale, and just offered to walk me back home, as he didn't feel comfortable leaving me to walk that far alone. I gladly accepted the offer and made a big show of offering all the officers a Tic Tac as I left. I'm not sure what happened to the entitled mum, as me and my friends all decided to just go back to mine so I could rest and we could duke it out on Smash Bros. But the 4 officers did stay behind, so I think she got a stern talking to. A few days later, I was brought to hospital, where they discovered that the supposed chronic migraines that had made me pass out were in fact due to leukemia. My days, what a story. Honestly, this is probably one of the most disgusting entitled women that I've ever come across in any of these stories. And what's worse is that being from England myself, I can completely picture and, even hear her voice like rattling in my brain. If you live in England, you'll know exactly the sort of person that OP has met here. Just a horrible human being. That's all I can say. A couple things that I wasn't completely sure on. First off, with the police officer just trying the Tic Tac, I'm not sure if that would happen. Maybe he smelt it or something and was like, no, this actually is a Tic Tac, or could determine it from the shape. But if I was a police officer there, I probably wouldn't, want to actually risk taking an actual drug. It'd be weird for someone to offer me one, but you never know. Some kids in England are very strange, a little bit risky, but maybe it happened. I'm not sure. What do you reckon? And then secondly, I know the title is Entitled Mum Calls the Police on Me Because of My Cancer, but to be fair, she had no idea that you did have cancer at that point. Neither did you. So I think that's a little bit of a stretch of a title, but we do actually have an update from OP about his cancer and what happened after this. As of course, when this story happened, he didn't even know that he did have cancer, and we only just got to, understand at the end that he was diagnosed a week later. So OP says, with so many concern about my health, I feel I should just make a main comment to reassure everyone. I'm 2 years into my treatment now, and I'm much better. The migraines are gone, and I'm almost a whole year post bone marrow transplants. I still take a lot of medication, such as painkillers, antibiotics, and supplements to treat the side effects of the very aggressive treatment I had to undergo due to a specific mutation, as well as some oral chemo as maintenance, both to try and keep me from relapsing, as well as keeping my graft versus host disease in check. Well, good to see OP that you're alright. I mean, that sounds disgusting. Jesus, I'm so sorry, but yeah, good to hear you're on the mend. Entitled Mother tries to get her name on my car. Hello everyone. I recently posted a story about my husband's entitled stepmother, and the encouraging responses I received have given me the courage to post about my entitled mother. If you read my other post, you will have a sense of how entitled the Karen in that story was. But my entitled mother makes her look like Mother Teresa. Not kidding. I'm 46 now, but this story begins when I was 14. The backstory is long, and the story itself spans 18 months, so this is going to be a very long one. Sorry in advance. Don't apologize. Here we go. First off, the backstory. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. I have 2 older brothers, and my mother really shouldn't have had children. I later realized that she is a sociopath. But as a kid, I only knew she was a huge manipulator and was a great actress. She did evil things and could turn on the tears when appropriate and play the victim. My grandparents were wonderful people and sadly were just blind to their children's bad behavior. My mother was the oldest of 3 children, and she had 2 younger brothers, and they were all terrible adults. My grandparents built a second house on their property for my mother and stepfather, who was just as evil as my mother. We technically lived with my mum and stepdad in that second house, but it was my grandparents who really took care of us. They paid the bills for both houses, grew a garden, and put food on both tables. My grandparents bought our school clothes and were the ones that got us Christmas presents from Santa each year. My grandmother would actually get up each morning, walk to our house, get us all up out of bed, dressed, and walk us to the bus stop, and made sure we got on the bus. We'd come home from school and go to grandma's house for snacks, to do homework, play, and we wouldn't really go to the second house until it was time to go to bed. My mother and stepdad both worked a job and knew how to blow through money and cry poor to my grandparents, who would pay the bills for the sake of the grandkids. My grandparents were wonderful people who really loved us, but were sadly just plain naive about my mother and the abuse she subjected me and my brothers to. When my mother married my stepfather, me and my brothers were very young, and I don't have but a few memories of my biological father. My mother enrolled us into school with the last name of my stepfather, and I just always assumed that my stepfather had adopted us. It wasn't until my oldest brother got his driver's permit and I saw that his last name on the license was that of my biological father's that I started asking questions. My oldest brother was 3 years older than me and told me that his birth certificate said his last name wasn't that of our stepfather's. And so I asked if mine and my other brother's name were the same. He just told me that he didn't know. But I did some sneaking around when no one was home and found my birth certificate and social security card, and they both showed that my last name was that of my biological father's. That meant that I was 12 years old when I found out what my real name was. As we grew up, I watched as my mum would take my brother's earnings from their jobs, and even though each of them had bought their own vehicles, she got her name on their titles, and then would threaten to take away their cars if she didn't get what she wanted. So now you have an idea of who she is, and this now leads me to my story. I got a job waiting tables when I was 14. Yes, I was technically not old enough to work, but sometimes you do what you have to do. I was paid in cash for my hours and of course my tips. My grandparents made sure I got to and from work, and I saved every bit of cash I could from my mother. She took some of my money, unfortunately, but I was able to hide away most of it. I worked 40 or more hours a week and went to school as well, and made good grades. I didn't mind working so much because it got me out of the house, and the more I worked, the more I made. Fast forward a year and I'm at my best friend's house and we were having a conversation that went like this. I'm going to get my permit in 6 months and I need to figure out how to get a car. I've saved quite a bit of money, but I'm not sure how to actually get one. My best friend replied, I don't know either. How much money do you have? Well, I've saved about $2,000. By the time I'm 15 and a half, I should have at least 2.5k or more if I keep working the hours I work now. That's a lot. You should be able to get something with that, surely. Yeah, but I don't know much about cars, and I can't ask grandma or grandpa because they'll tell my mum, and then she'll take the car from me. Now, my best friend's dad, who has been listening this whole time, gets involved in the conversation. Hey, OP, I have a motor and transmission sitting in my garage that I can't use. Didn't you once say that your grandfather has a garage? Yeah, he's got a large garage that he uses to fix his cars, tractors, and other mechanical things that need fixing. So if you had the parts, he's got the space and tools to fix a car? Yeah, I suppose so. What are you doing this weekend? I'm having to work the morning shift on Saturday, but I get off at 1 p.m. Can you come over after you get off work? Yes. Why? I think I can help you with your problem, but don't say anything to anyone. Okay. So Saturday rolls around and I get off work. Now, when my grandpa picks me up, I asked if he would drive me to my friend's house so we can do some homework. I was good at maths and she was good at science, and we'd help each other out with homework because I sucked at science and she sucked at maths. He said sure and drove me over and dropped me off. I go in the house and there is my best friend and her dad both ready to go out. The dad said, "We're going shopping." "This is going to be great," said my friend. "But what are we actually shopping for?" I questioned. "I'll tell you in the car on the way. Let's just go." We get into the car, and as we are driving to town, the dad explains that the transmission and motor in his garage had come from a family member's car who had died, and the car itself was trashed, but they were able to pull the motor and transmission, which were fine. Now, they scrapped the car, but they didn't really have a use for the motor or transmission. He said that he spent $100 to replace a few parts on the motor that needed replacing. He said that if I wanted the motor and transmission, he would sell them to me for $100, and that our trip to town today was to find a car that would fit it. I told him, okay. This wonderful man drove me and my friend to a local junkyard to find a car. He had connections with several junk car owners and knew that one of them had a car that would fit the motor and transmission he had and was in great condition, and he was actually thinking of buying the car for himself. But when he heard about me trying to get a car, he thought it would be better for me. We arrive at the junkyard and I'm thinking there's no way I'm going to get a car here. But where in the back of the yard was this 1979 Chevy Monte Carlo that was beautiful. It was just a shell of a car, no motor, transmission, tires, or anything, but the car itself was perfect. No dents, and the paint was still in great condition. I actually couldn't believe how pretty the car was. A metallic brown. The dad explains to me that I can get the car, motor, and transmission, and he would take me to town with a parts list and I can buy all the parts. He would arrange to have the car and all parts delivered to my grandparents' house, but only if I thought I could convince my grandfather to put it together. I told him that I was on board. So, I I bought the car shell and had to get the front and rear axles and rims from another car at the same junkyard. The dad made sure that the owner listed me as the buyer on the bill of sale. This will come into play later. And then, for the rest of the day, he took me to parts stores to get all the parts I would need, including tires. Now, I did offer to pay the dad for gas, but he wouldn't take any money from me. I was nervous about going down this route, but the dad knew exactly what he was doing. And he even helped me to track down the original owner of the car to sign over the title to me. Now, I'm still not sure why this was wholly necessary, but something about having a real title instead of a junkyard title was important. I paid for all the expenses, and the dad walked me through the process. This was a Saturday, but it took till the next Saturday before the dad could get everything arranged for delivery. So, Friday night, I tell Grandpa what I did, but I wasn't really sure how he was going to take the news. So, in wanting to protect the amazing dad in case things went badly, I told my grandpa that I had been the instigator in wanting to buy the parts, and the dad had simply helped me, thinking it was okay with my grandpa. To my utter amazement, my grandpa started smiling, and we had the following conversation. You're telling me that tomorrow, the dad is going to be delivering a car, transmission, motor, and other car parts here, and you just want me to put the car together for you? Well, yeah, I figured it was cheaper to buy the car this way, and since you have the garage and the tools, you could do it. The boys, my brothers, could help too. I know I didn't ask, and I'm asking a lot from you, but I don't have to borrow any money from anyone to do it this way, and by the time I get my driver's permits, I'll have my own car. My grandpa had a sly smile on his face. How much have you spent total on everything? I've spent $736.27. I'd already totaled up my receipts, and this was for everything. I still remember the total to this day. Really? And you've got everything we need to put the car together? Yeah, I believe so. But if I've missed something, I can get it, and you'll tell me what I need, I'm sure. Well, you've already spent the money, so there's no going back on it. I actually wish you would have taken me with you so I could make sure everything you bought is what you need. I guess your brothers are going to be busy tomorrow. With this, I gave him a huge hug and thanked him profusely. I knew he had his doubts and was thinking I probably got taken for over $700, but he was willing to see how things panned out. The next day, just as my friend's dad had said, a truck arrived with the car and all the parts. My friend was with her dad in another vehicle behind the truck, and my grandpa directed the driver to the garage where he watched everything get unloaded. My brothers were there, and everyone was just amazed when they got a look at the actual car and the condition it was in. My grandpa went over and shook my friend's dad's hand and thanked him for helping me. And then my friend and her dad left after I thanked him repeatedly and again offered him money for the gas, which he again refused. My grandpa came over to me and just winked at me and told the boys to get to work. My entitled mother showed up a few hours after the work began and was being filled in by my grandpa on what was going on. Needless to say, she was very upset that she wasn't involved in the process and kept saying that it wasn't going to work. It took about 3 weeks for my brothers and my grandpa to get the car put together because they didn't work on it every day, mostly on Saturdays. I kept asking my grandpa if I needed any more parts, and he said that I got everything and that I made a very savvy decision. After 3 weeks, my car was in running condition, and my grandpa began to show me how to check oil, change tires, and basic things I would need to know about owning my first car. Fast forward a few months, and I'm now 15 and a half, and I go to take my test for my learner's permits. Now, I didn't mention this before, but my grandparents had a farm, so I was able to learn how to drive in my car on the farm without endangering people on the streets. So I felt prepared for my test. After passing my test and getting my permits, I now needed to get some insurance. After work one day, I walked a half block down the street to the insurance agency that my entire family used. I knew I was a minor, and I was dreading having to ask to be put on my mother's insurance, so I was going to ask if I could be put on my grandparents' insurance. I walk into the insurance agency and have the following conversation. I greet an insurance agent inside. Hi, remember me? Of course, you are so-and-so's daughter and the granddaughter of your grandparents. Yes, I just got my learner's permit a few days ago and I need to get some insurance. You sure do. Come into my office and let's take a look. As I'm following him into the office, I say, do I have to be on my mother's policy? I was getting ready to ask if I could be put on my grandparents' policy. But before I could ask, the agent replied, "Well, you can have your own policy, but it's expensive. I wouldn't advise it." Wait, what? You mean I can have my own policy even though I'm a minor? Yeah, this state has licensed you to drive and also requires you to have insurance. Therefore, you can get your own policy if you'd like. But most kids get insurance on their parents' policy to save money. But I can get my own policy in my name and no one else's. Yes, but I wouldn't advise doing that because it is very expensive. Even though you've got good grades and are a girl, it would be very expensive. But I do want my own policy. Are you sure? Absolutely. So, after getting the information together about my car and explaining liability insurance, he gives me the quote for 6 months, and then the quote for what it would be for month to month. I wrote him out a check to cover the 6 months, and his mouth just kind of dropped. He once again tried to give me a quote on what it would be if I was to go on my mum's policy, but I never gave him the chance. I wanted my own policy. I left that day with an insurance card, and I was feeling very good as I walked back to the cafe that I worked at and waited for my grandma to pick me up. When she picked me up, I told her I took care of insurance that day, but didn't tell her any details, and told her that I wanted to go to the tag agency in 2 days to have the title of my car transferred into my name. I asked her if she would be willing to put her name on my car since I was a minor, and she told me that if I wanted that, then she would do that. I thanked her and told her we would do it in 2 days as soon as I got off school, since I didn't have to work that day. Fast forward to 2 days, and I get home from school, walked into the kitchen to find my grandma cooking. I asked her if she was ready to go, and she turned to me and said the following. "I was talking to your mother, and she said that since she is your mother, that her name is the one that should be on your car, and she is coming by to pick you up and take you to the tag agency." My heart sank a little bit, and I was annoyed that my grandma had been talking to my mum. "I don't think it has to be an actual parent. I think it can be any adult," I replied. "Well, she is your mother, and it is more appropriate that her name go on your car than mine." As soon as my grandma said those words, my mum pulls up and honks her horn. I am so mad at this point, and I just walk out the door and get into her car. "Did your grandma tell you what we talked about?" my mum said. "Yes." "Good. You've got all the paperwork?" "Yes." On the ride over, I was seething. I vowed her name wasn't going to go on my car. She had done this to my brothers and had repeatedly denied them their cars when she got mad and wanted control over them, even though she never spent a dime to buy their cars or insurance. I vowed to myself that I would put my grandma's name on my title even if she wasn't with me. We get to the tag agency and wait in line. It gets to my turn and I lay the title, bill of sale, insurance card, and my ID on the counter, and the nice lady picked them up. She takes a few minutes to look over the paperwork and then addresses me. "So your name is spelled like this, correct?" It is an odd spelling, so I understand that she wants to make sure that it's spelled correctly. As she gets to the 3rd letter, my entitled mum interrupts her. "Excuse me, she is a minor and my daughter, and my name needs to be on the title." I'm about to say something about putting my grandma's name on it when the lady says, "Well, your daughter's the only name on the bill of sale, so her name is the only one that has to be on the title. Thank you to my friend's dad for that." "But she is a minor and can't have a car in her name. I'm her mother and my name has to go on the title." That's not actually how it works. The only name that has to go on the title is the name that appears on the bill of sale. It doesn't matter that she is a minor, she can own a car in her own name. My mum is getting red and very mad at this point. "But I am her mother and she is a minor," stressing each word slowly as if she's talking to a small child who just doesn't understand. The tag agency lady now looks at my mum irritated. "That doesn't matter. She can have it in her name if she wants." I could have jumped over the counter and hugged and kissed this woman at this point. "But..." The lady cuts off my mum and looks at me. "Do you want your mother on your title?" "No." "Okay then, let's carry on. So again, you spell your name like this?" And she begins to repeat back to me the spelling of my name, leaving my mum furious at being cut off and not getting what she wanted. After the lady verifies all the information, she informs us she has to go to type up the paperwork and that it will be a few minutes. She isn't that far from the counter, and I know that she and her co-workers can hear the following conversation that then happens between me and my mum. "You know, you won't be able to drive the car if you don't have insurance." "I know, but I have insurance." Not if I cancel it, then you can't drive. But I have my own insurance. No, you don't. You're a minor, and you can't have your own insurance. You have to be on my policy. Nope, I got my own insurance. All right, well, I know you're lying. When we leave here, I'm going to cancel it. We just stood there in silence, waiting for the agency lady to get finished with my paperwork. And I'm just vowing that she is not going to cancel my insurance, and I can tell she is seething that she didn't get her name on my title. Now it's clear she's in a hurry to get to the insurance agency so she can try and cancel my insurance. The lady returns to the counter and smiles very sweetly at me and says, "Here is your paperwork, and you should get your title in about a week. Congratulations on your car and good luck." I turned and saw that at that point I was by myself because my entitled mum had already left the building and was getting into her car, ready to leave. I leave and get into the passenger side and I don't say a word as she speeds out of the parking lot. The insurance agency is less than a mile down the road, and I swear my mum was doing 80 to get there. As soon as we pull into the parking lot, she gets out and practically runs into the building, and I was just trying to keep up. I was ready for a fight to keep her from cancelling my insurance. She got into the building before I could get there, and when I entered the building, she was already shouting for the insurance agent who was exiting his office as I entered the door. "My daughter says she has her own insurance." Yes, she does. "But she can't have that. She's a minor. It must be against the law." "Mom, she's been licensed to drive by our states, and they require her to carry insurance. It doesn't matter that she's a minor. She can have her own insurance. It is the law." "But she is a minor." She says the word minor very slowly, like again, she's trying to explain to him the meaning of the word. "That doesn't matter. She is required by a law to carry insurance. Fine." And I tried to talk her out of getting a policy in her own name because it's expensive, but she insisted. "Oh, that is ridiculous. I want you to cancel her insurance right now." She is still screaming at the top of her lungs. "Mom, the policy is in her own name, and the only way her policy can be cancelled is if she fails to pay or requests to cancel it herself. Since she's already paid for the policy in full, then only a request from her can cancel that policy." I finally interject at this point. "I don't want to cancel my policy. She is a minor, and this is against the law." "No, Mom, it isn't against the law." Without another word, my mum turns on her heels and heads out the door. I mouthed "I'm sorry" and "thank you" to the agents and turned to run out the door myself. She was trying to drive out the parking lot before I even got in the car, so I rushed to get in the car because I did not want to walk the 10 miles back to my grandparents' farm. On the drive home, she was driving whilst hitting me in the passenger seat, telling me what an ungrateful girl I was, that if I died, no one would be able to do anything with the car since no one's name was on the car. I just endured the hitting and actually didn't feel most of it. I couldn't believe that I actually ended up in a position where she couldn't take my car and had no hold over me. I was so happy inside. When we got to my grandparents' farm, I had to actually jump out of the car while it was moving because she wasn't going to take the time to drop me off. I walked into the kitchen where my grandma was still cooking. "How did it go?" "It went well, Grandma." "Did you get everything settled?" "Sure did." I walked over and gave her a kiss. All my anger from earlier had disappeared. Had my grandma taken me to the tag agency, I would have probably put her on my title. And somewhere down the line, my entitled mum may have convinced her to sign the title over to her. I know this. This is one of the rare times where my grandmother's naive nature about my entitled mum had actually worked in my favour. That car saved my life. Literally. I was able to leave the farm just a few months later since I now had transportation and no one had the right to take it away from me. Sorry this post was long, and I'm sad to say this is only one story of many, but it was one of the few times where I came out on top. If you're still reading, thank you for your time and have a great day. I couldn't echo that more. Wow, where to even begin with this story? What an absolute marathon. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was definitely a long one, probably one of the longest stories that I've ever read, longest single stories I've ever read on my channel. But you guys have been asking for longer stories, and I thought, you know what? Let's give the people what they want. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. As for OP, as I always say with these people, you know, it must be so hard living with parents like that. Pretty much just, you know, stealing and thieving and just using your own kids for their own goods, right? This mum has nothing to do with this car. She hasn't, you know, got any of the money for the car, hasn't paid for it, has nothing to do with the insurance, nothing. It's her kid's car, it's OP's car, but still she wants her name somehow associated with it so that she can control her own children. It's mad. If your child has done well enough and has worked their butt off to get enough money to buy a car at the age of 15 and a half, which I guess must be legal in whatever state this is in, then just please, like, surely you have to be, you know, really proud of them and say to them, you've done an amazing job to do that well at 15 and a half. Not try and, you know, ruin it for them and steal their car and have control over it. It's mental. But hey, that's an entitled parent for you.